Do you think?
Good evening. We are starting the Malibu Planning Commission regularly scheduled meeting for Tuesday, January 16th, 2018. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jennings, Commissioner Mazza,
Here.
Commissioner Euring,
Here.
Vice Chair Marks,
Here.
Chair Pearson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, Chris, I saw Chris here. Will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? That is a fantastic Chris invitation there. It's like he was here and then he's gone.
I make a motion to approve the agenda with item 4A continued to February 5th, 2017.
Second.
Bonnie, anything we missed there? Or is that okay? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
So approved. Can I have a report on the posting of the agenda, please?
The agenda for this meeting was properly posted on January 4th, 2018, with the amended agenda properly posted on January 11th, 2018.
Okay, thank you. Let the record show Chris has now re-entered the building and can make up the Pledge of Allegiance next time. No ceremonial presentations. Do we have any written or oral communication from the public on an item not on the agenda? No? Okay, commissioners, Jeff? No. Steve?
Not today.
John?
Just a question on the status of the dark skies ordinance
It'll be coming up later this year.
this year.
Yes, in the spring, I think.
Okay, is there a reason why it's so long?
Yes, we have. I'm going to be talking to you about that in just a little bit.
Okay.
Anything else, John? Okay, I have a question, just because out of curiosity, not that I even really care. When does the chairmanship change over to Chris here? It seems like I've been sitting up here yakking for a long time.
March 5th.
March 5th, wow. Well, maybe I'll miss a meeting so you can practice. Okay. I just want to add, welcome everyone here tonight. Couple of things that I like to go over since there's a number of people here. Our job up here is to make the findings on the items that come before us, and it's not based on who we like, who's been in Malibu the longest, who's a international drug runner, anything else besides our making the findings based on the code. So that's what we're attempting to do up here. And you may or may not like our decisions. And if you don't, you do have the right to appeal within 10 days. And I think $500 less in your pocket, right? Something like that. Okay, I don't know the exact price for sure. If you wish to speak on an item tonight, please fill out a speaker card. There's some out there, and you can hand it to Kathleen up here. And I think that's what I have to add on that. On to the, oh, Bonnie, sorry.
Good evening, commissioners, and Happy New Year to everybody. I just wanted to make a few remarks. First of all, I am going to miss the meeting on February 5th, so Richard Malika is going to sit in this chair. And then second, mostly I would just wanted to chat about planning operations and what's been going on in the planning department. As you probably know, we've lost some staff. Most recently, Stephanie Honor, one of our senior planners, her last day was last week. She got an offer she couldn't refuse from a private law firm, and it's closer to home, so we're sorry to see her go, and I can tell you she was sorry to leave, but you gotta do what you gotta do. So in terms of staffing, we've been understaffed for some time. We are working hard to change that. We've got interviews that will be conducted next week and the week after. So we're filling positions as quickly as we can. It's been a struggle to provide the best customer service that we would like to provide, just given the staffing constraints. And so one of the things we've been doing is assessing everybody's workload so that we can redistribute the projects of the planners who have left to people. I mean, pretty much everybody's maxed out at this point, but the planners that are getting those redistributed projects will be fitting those in their queue. It's not going to the bottom of the pile. It'll be fitting in where, you know, it fits in terms of how recently there's been activity or it's become complete and things like that. So we are trying to address those things as quickly as possible. And also, we are working on some operational things that will hopefully streamline processes for us and help us get through the backlog that we have more quickly. Just to give you an idea, our preliminary estimate is that we've got around 60 to 70 projects that need a planner to work with the applicant to get story polls up and or write the staff report and bring it to hearing. So that's quite a lot of stuff. I understand that everybody's anxious to move forward. It's just going to take a little time. So I'll be coming back to you with some ideas about how to make our meetings run more efficiently here so that we can get things done as quickly and fairly as possible. And then in terms of operations, the first thing I wanted to mention is that the public counter, the planning counter, we're going to be, as of February 1, we're going to be changing the hours. So it'll open at 7:30 like always and close at noon, and then be open by appointment only after 12 noon. And this is so our planning techs will be able to more efficiently process ministerial applications, event permits, and things like that. This is also pretty consistent with the hours that other departments maintain, so people should be able to do their business unless they otherwise have an appointment. Another change that we're making, we're excited about this, is starting February 1, when someone is submitting an application, it will, in order to be submitted, it will need to be complete. And that sounds kind of obvious, but you'd be surprised how often people come to the counter and they're missing their wave uprush report, or they don't have all their fees, or they're missing their notification labels, or a title report, or some aspect of the project application materials is not there. So we're only going to accept complete submittals. I think this will streamline our incomplete review process, help us to focus on the projects that are actually ready to go. So we'll be starting that. And then in terms of the incomplete reviews, we're going to be providing the departmental reviews from all the different departments and the planning department all together in one package. And then those, when someone resubmits in response to those, all of that stuff will need to come in at the same time. I think this will help us stay more coordinated among the different city departments and in better coordination with the applicant. Let's see. Another thing we're going to do is if an application is inactive for 12 months, meaning that we don't hear from somebody, we reach out to them, nothing's happening, we're going to start closing those applications due to inactivity again. So we're not spending time on things that aren't ready to go, weren't ready to go. And then I already told you about reassignments. In terms of new applications that are coming in, I think we're going to be, normally we try to respond to new applications within 30 days. That's going to stretch out a little bit so that we can catch up on the ones that are in the pipeline. So that'll be more like 30 to 60 days to get an incomplete letter. Again, hopefully those incomplete letters will be shorter to write because the application will be complete to begin with. And then finally, kind of related to what Commissioner Mazza was asking about, given the challenges with staffing and everything, we're going to be consulting with the council about legislative priorities to find out what they want to see move and when. So dark skies, the wireless ordinance, neighborhood character, all those different things that we've been working on, short-term rentals. We're going to make sure we're processing things in the order that they would like to see them. So that's my update for now. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Just one quick one. You know, the getting complete submittals, is there a checklist these guys have that they have? Because
Yes.
Unless
There are detailed checklists.
they're out there now.
Yes, for all different types of applications.
And they're not checking them off.
Well, it's probably in an effort to be more customer service friendly. We have been accepting things so that somebody doesn't have to make a second trip.
But they got something they can follow.
Yes.
And then the process for scheduling time, since you now have to schedule, like how far in advance, any guidance on that?
I'm not sure I understand. You mean for hearings?
You were saying after 12.
For
Normal, you said that desk hours will be by appointment only.
yeah, so you can contact the planning hotline or either of our planning technicians, and they will make an appointment.
On the dropping the applications that haven't done anything in 12 months, is there some kind of notice that has to be given, or how does that work?
Yeah, we do communicate with applicants before we do that, and you'd be surprised how many will say, "Oh, I didn't know you still had that application." So it's, yeah.
Okay, and now they have to prepay all their fees.
Right.
Those are just gone.
If they request a refund, we can assess how much of the fees that may have been spent in doing partial reviews and things like that.
Okay, so, because we see every meeting, we see things that have taken 2-3 years to get to us. That's
What I mean by inactive, it doesn't mean that if someone's actively working on a project, like they're trying to solve a percolation problem with their septic system, that wouldn't be an inactive project. If they're actively working on something, if they're waiting on a state lands commission letter or some kind of a question like that that's out of their control, that's not the type of thing we're talking about. Sometimes things just come in and sit.
and then they're out of the queue. They got to start at the bottom again. Okay.
Thank you. That's great. I love to hear that making efforts to upgrade and move forward, and I hope that's an ongoing process. That's great. Trevor, do you have anything to add?
Nope.
Oh, Jeff?
Oh, sorry, Jeff.
I know, it's easy to lose sight of me down here at the end.
No, I just didn't see that you were going to talk.
Bonnie, I'm a little confused about the incomplete business, or the status of requiring a completed application before you'll accept it. Because my understanding is that the process of determining whether an application is complete is sometimes a long and laborious one, and that's why you say that the process of the 30-day process of response is going to be stretched out to 30 to 60 in order to send out an incomplete letter. So maybe it's a terminological problem we've got, but perhaps you could clarify that a little bit.
Sure. So what I mean by a complete submittal, like Commissioner Euring was asking about, we do have submittal checklists that say that all the different materials that are required for various types of applications, whether it's an administrative plan review or a lot line adjustment and all of those things. We're going to be looking to see that you have all of those items. We're not going to be evaluating whether your color-coded slope analysis is 100% correct at the counter when you submit, but we are going to look to make sure that you have one. So that's what I'm talking about, not whether you're ready for hearing, just that we have all of the items we need in order to evaluate your conformance with the code.
And Trevor, did you have anything to add? No? Okay. And we did have one public comment. I did say some, but it's okay. Norm Haney.
I didn't realize that you had already
I was
asked for
sneaky.
public
I was very
comment.
sneaky about it.
Yeah, Norm Haney, 22741 Pacific Coast Highway. The comments that I've heard from our planning director tonight concerns me considerably, because each department acts separately. You actually have to go to each department and submit things. You have to do it to the planning department as well. But then if you want to make sure that what you're submitting to the planning department actually gets to the department, say Public Works, you're better off to make sure that you hand deliver them. And what I've heard here tonight is that if you have a problem with Public Works and it takes you 4 months to get a response from them, then that delays your ability to submit other things on the other departments that would help get them approved. Right now, each department works separately. So you can work hard to get your approval for the wastewater treatment system, and once you get that, that's fine, that's off the checklist. Then you work separately with biology to figure out what they need. You solve that problem, and that's off the checklist. But if you have a problem with Public Works, or you have a problem with your coastal engineering wave uprush report that needs to be approved by Mike Phipps, you simply have to wait to submit everything to the other departments until that one department issue is resolved, or you get a response from that department, which could take a long, long time. So this process of waiting till every department gets their response into you before you can respond to one through the planning department is simply going to delay the process, in my opinion, many months. Because generally it's 1 or 2 departments that's the problem that you have to deal with, sometimes only one. And if you can't resolve the other issues with the other departments until you're ready to submit, until they, say Public Works or the Health Department, gets their response, it's simply going to delay your ability to get through the system. And right now, it takes a long time to get through the system. I got a letter, an incomplete letter, recently on a project that I submitted just about everything that you could possibly want. But there's an incomplete letter. And I can't resolve these issues independently with the various departments, biology, David Crawford, who's basically only in 2 hours a week, Health Department, Public Works Department, Coastal Engineering Department. They all work independently, and up till now, we have been told we have to resolve those problems independently with those departments. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your input, Norm. Do you want to, is there anything there you want to clarify, or?
What we're looking for is responses to the incomplete items to come in all at one time. We've had issues with parts of things coming in and other departments not knowing that things changed on the project and coordination like that. This is a new thing. If it ends up not being an efficient way to work, then we'll change it. But right now, this is something that we've gotten positive feedback from some applicants on, and from a coordination standpoint internally, it makes sense. So that it's something we were going to try out.
Just one other question. We've got a half a dozen local cities of approximately the same size in this area, Calabasas and Hidden Hills, and all of the ones that are in the COG. I don't understand why we seem to be trying to reinvent the wheel when this is all done by every department in the state, up and down the state. It would seem to me that it would be pretty much a question of just of going to the planner's manual and saying, how is this supposed to be organized, and then just doing it that way. I just don't understand why it has to be a process of reinventing the wheel. But again, that's not our job to decide that. It's the planning, it's the city council's job. But it just is it's confusing to me.
There are actually other cities that that operate that way, where everything has to come back. Everything goes out as a package. Everything comes in as a package. So it's not unprecedented.
Yeah, I guess my comment was going to be along the same line as Jeff's in terms of, are there other cities that you guys deal with that are working well? And if so, it seems to me I should take a look at one of those cities and say, how come, what are they doing that we're not doing? But like I said, Jeff said it's the city council's job, not ours.
We're trying to implement some new processes to smooth the path for applications, and if something doesn't work, we will fix it again.
And I'm sure the applicants will let us know. I'm guessing.
Now, on top of all this, we're exempt from this Permit Streamlining Act because of the Coastal Commission?
For coastal development permits, yes. But for administrative APRs and things like that, no.
So this will not change their processing?
Yeah, I'm primarily talking about CDPs.
I probably shouldn't, again, this is way above my pay grade. I got to believe that the problems we're having have been had by other people in other cities before, and that there are consultants, for lack of a better word, who have sort of helped cities manage their way through this thing and make everybody, having the experience of how you fix this stuff. I work with a lot of consultants, and if they're good, they can really help you achieve what you're trying. I'm just wondering, are we looking outside, or are we trying to do this all internally?
We are primarily talking with applicants and people that we work with regularly to get their input on things. And so far, the feedback we've gotten has been positive on the changes that we're proposing to make. It's an iterative process. Like I said, if something doesn't work, then we won't continue to do it.
Okay, with that, we'll move forward to the consent calendar. Does anyone wish to pull anything off the consent calendar?
I'd like to pull 3B1.
I'll do 3B2.
Okay, so we have pulled everything off the consent calendar. So 3B1, Administrative Coastal Development Permit number 15-007 and Demolition Permit number 17-031, an application to remove an existing failed on-site wastewater treatment system and install a new alternative on-site wastewater treatment system at 3205 Sumac Ridge Road. Can we have a report, please?
Mr. Chairman, I don't need a huge report. I've read it all. I just have a couple questions.
Okay, can we have a very brief report then? The legally brief report, I don't know.
Is there a specific thing you wanted to focus on, Commissioner Mazza?
Yeah, it's the road easement.
Anything in particular?
Well, it appears on A3, 3.7 and 3.0, it appears that approximately half of the road has got gates and fences and stuff on it from this project. And there's other people on the road, so I just wondered how we permit, and I could be wrong, but it looks like half of the road on A 3.0 or 3.7. Why are we giving a permit for that, a fence on the road, a gate on the road, the other stuff, instead of making them stay out of the road easement?
Oh, the proposed project was reviewed by the Public Works Department, and they didn't require any type of encroachment permit, as we understand that the road was going to be outside of that road easement.
It is a private road, and based on the survey, it appears that those improvements are already there.
Then why do we have drawings of the brand-new improvements? We've got gates and fences and...
Are they replacing the gates and fences?
They are providing for a new gate at the front yard, but the gate was previously existing, and so was some of the fencing in the front yard.
Okay, so my real question is, people set up roads for the future. Is there any kind of guideline on how much of the road we just let people use? And can they come back later, when 50 years from now, when there's 50 houses on the road, and say, hey, we want our road back?
The road is maintained privately. It's a private easement, and so it would be a civil matter whether as long as the fire department doesn't have an issue with the width of the paving, the city wouldn't get involved with whether there are encroachments in the private easement.
Well, for example, a utility easement's a private easement. We gonna let people build next to a telephone pole?
Well, I have a site plan of the proposed project here, and if I can just demonstrate that you do have the driveway access from Sumac Ridge Road to the north, and you can see here that the proposed fence, the gate would be in this area here. Oh, sorry. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to try to do the laser pointer. Here's where the proposed gate would be. As you can see, the property line is demonstrated in a dashed line, and the proposed gate would be set back from the road easement. I don't have the exact number of feet on here, but I think it's about 20 to 25 feet setback from the access from Sumac Ridge here.
Okay, well, let me just ask you, this apparently is a masonry wall sticking out in the road. And I don't know what that is, because it doesn't describe it, but it looks like another masonry wall.
It's already there. It shows up on the survey. It's existing.
Yes, there will be no other improvements along Sumac Ridge other than the proposed fence and that access gate.
Okay, so I'm not trying to make a big deal out of this, but in general, do we just ignore private road easements and then let the neighbors figure out something happened and sue them? Or do we, if it was a public road, you'd never let them do it. So if it's a private road, we just say, private road?
I think it's going to depend on what the actual rights are to that easement. In this case, I think we're just dealing with a wastewater treatment system being replaced, so there isn't a change in what already exists in the roadway right there, and since there aren't any changes to it, it's not required to be brought up or
Yes,
evaluated, right?
the proposed project just includes, a new septic system, a proposed pool in the rear yard, and interior remodel to the single-family home. No improvements along Sumac Ridge other than the proposed fence and then the gate that's, set back beyond the property line.
So this stuff is still there? Is there right now?
Yes, as
walls.
demonstrated on the survey that was provided, there are already improvements along Sumac Ridge Road. And from what I understand, there are no other improvements outside of the proposed gate along Sumac Ridge.
Okay, thank you.
I did have one other question, just kind of for process. So all that's listed in the description of the CDP is the replacement of the treatment system, but there's a lot of other activity in the, scope. Is that just because everything else is over the counter, we don't discuss it, just for kind of?
The proposed project description is listed on page 1 of 18 of the administrative permit. So those are the other items that are part of the scope of work. The
Yeah, and
swimming pool and everything else.
Got it. So we just didn't list, we only listed the septic in the description because I'm just trying to understand, should we always look for, when it says septic, to look for other work that wouldn't require a permit, or what's the boundary where we don't list something else?
The primary part of the scope of work is the septic system, and then there's an interior remodel, which could have been over the counter. So, yeah, and the other stuff is accessory and could have been administrative, but it was included with this application to be processed all at once.
Okay, thank you.
So this description says new front fence.
Right, they're
So that's-
replacing, are they replacing the existing wall with a fence?
Yes, it's a remove and replacement of the fences along the front yard.
Okay, and that doesn't require you to go back to code? When you remove something, usually you have to go to code.
Yes, and that is why we went ahead and reviewed the project for height and view permeability along Sumac Ridge Road. Again, this proposed fence is within the front yard setback, but not along Sumac Ridge Road. The improvements you mentioned along Sumac Ridge on the actual road are already existing. This fence is set back from the actual curb.
But not the easement? Just what's there as a road now, not what it future could be, right?
Yes, I believe that the actual fence and gate, it's outside of that road easement.
Well, the road easement's driven. Can I see that?
We'll confirm.
That's the road easement. Everything this side of that line is. Okay, well, I'll drop it. It's beating a dead horse.
Well, I'm going to open the public hearing either way. All right, so we're going to open the public hearing. Is there anyone that wishes to address us on this issue? Okay, seeing nobody, we are closing the public hearing. We're back here for discussion or any other action.
I did just want to borrow the pointer and try one more description. Can you bring up that same image for a sec? So, okay, just to be clear, so this fence, the fence back here, chain link is what's being replaced. To John's point, that's the easement barrier, border, whatever you want to call it. There's existing improvements, kind of a stone wall that goes along this line. Since none of that's being touched, it's only the wall that's well behind the property line. This is not coming into question. Is that basically what's happening?
Yes, that dashed line you were pointing at is where the road easement ends. The actual property line goes to center line of Sumac Ridge Road. But again, the gate and the fence is outside of that road easement.
All right, thank you.
I say receive and file.
Sure, go for it.
Okay, I move we receive and file 3B1.
You don't need a motion, it just, without objection, you can receive and file it, Chairman.
Without objection.
Without objection, received and filed. Okay, we're on to 3B2, Administrative Coastal Development Permit number 15-053 and Site Plan Review number 15-041, an application for the construction of a new two-story single-family residence and associated development at 5849 Murphy Way. Can we have a report, please?
Yes, good evening, Chair Pearson and members of the Planning Commission. This is an administrative coastal development permit issued on January 9th, 2018, and is now reported to the Planning Commission. The project is for a 6,666 square foot residence with a 774 square foot basement, 899 square foot second unit, an 894 square foot pool house, and includes other associated development and a site plan review for construction in excess of 18 feet in height, but not to exceed 28 feet for a pitched roof. The notice of decision provides a picture from an exterior deck taken at 5837 Murphy Way. The neighbor later clarified that the primary view location was subsequently amended to be taken from the residence dining room. The applicant provided an exhibit earlier today, and it was provided to the Planning Commission as public correspondence showing that the portion of the proposed residence in excess of 18 feet do not block impressive scenes as viewed from either primary view location. Earlier today, Commissioner Mazza pointed out an error in the conformance table on page 6 of the agenda report, which includes a 205-foot, 9-inch proposed rear yard setback instead of 90 feet. However, the revised rear yard setback still complies with the 61-foot, 5-inch required rear yard setback. Nevertheless, the notice of decision will be revised to reflect this correction. Commissioner Massa also asked about the Asha setback. The proposed residence provides a 200-foot setback from Asha as identified on the LCP Asha overlay map. The adjacent mapped Asha is located on the adjacent property immediately to the south of the subject property. Even though there is some vegetation between the mapped Asha and the subject property's rear yard line, some of the vegetation does not qualify as Asha because the required field modification of surrounding buildings extend into this area. Also pursuant to the LCP regulations indicating when a biological assessment is required, the city biologist determined one was not required because the proposed development maintained a 200-foot setback from the mapped Asha. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. And I just want to let planning commissioners know we do have 5 speaker slips on this item. Let's start with if we have any disclosures.
Yes, I visited the site, met with the applicant, went up to take a look. I've never been up Murphy Way, so I wanted to see what was up there. Took a look at the size of the houses surrounding it, and also wanted to get a perspective of the neighbor who was complaining about the view being blocked, and sort of got a sense that the staff report was accurate in terms of saying it wasn't a major blockage.
And I did talk to Richard about the error in the setback. Also, I talked about the Esha, and we did not come to an agreement on that.
Chris?
Sorry, I had a conversation with the applicant. I visited the property. I observed something which doesn't seem to line up with what's in the staff report. There's one property listed, I believe to the northwest, whatever that is. It's listed as something like 3,700 square feet. It seemed much larger. That's the only thing that caught my eye. Just in driving by, it didn't seem to foot with what was listed on the report. Other than that, nothing else.
Okay, and I know the property very well just from living in that area for many years, but I did not specially visit it for this project. John?
I also did participate in the April 30th, 2013 coastal development permit hearing for the property at the rear of this property that is claimed to be not Asha.
Okay, any questions of staff before we open the public hearing?
I just want to remind us all that the only question before us is whether to bring this matter back for a full CDP. We're not deciding the issue tonight.
Thank you for that reminder.
Questions, right?
Any questions, or should we open the public
I
hearing
think
first?
the public hearing, then I'll come back.
Okay, we have 5 opening the public hearing. We have 5 slips. I think, if I'm reading it right, 2 are the applicant. Is that Zoran and Oliver? I believe you're part of the applicant team. Did I miss anyone on the applicant team? All right. And what's your name?
Jason Aryeh.
They're the owners.
Oh, okay. But you didn't put it in a slip.
I did, sir, I believe.
I do not have it.
Also Matt Goff.
I have Matt. And Jason, you said?
Yes,
I don't see a Jason here. No? Nothing? That's my fault. Okay, that's.
But they're the owners, they're part of the applicant team.
Okay. And Olivia, so are you part of the applicant team too?
I am, lucky them.
Okay. All right. So do they get, how does it work on this?
Oral communications, those 3 plus 1, 3,
Okay, okay, so in this, nice artwork. That's a keeper. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so you get 3 plus 4, you get 7 minutes total in this case since it's not a full, you know, we're still on consent calendar. And so there you go, 7 minutes, however you guys want to divide it up. One second, can they reserve time in this setting for, okay, no, okay. Total 7 minutes. Yeah, there is another speaker. So,
Thank you, Chair Pearson, and thank you, Commissioners. My name is Jason Arier. My wife, Olivia, and I are building this project together with my brother-in-law, Oliver, their best friend from, I think, Webster and Malibu High, Zorn, and it's a family affair of sorts. We are either going to use this as a personal home if we have another child. We've been blessed with 2 in the past 2 years, or if not, we will probably sell the home when it's completed. I have taken great amount of effort to make sure that every neighbor, with the exception of my esteemed neighbor, Jerry Renaga and his wife Deborah, are supportive of this project. Steve and Azita Goldman, Katharina Hahn, Olivia and I live 2 doors away from it as well. That's where our home is. John and Ruth Littlechild at 5857, who is the immediate neighbor to this project, has submitted a letter on our behalf supporting the project. Jerry and Lynn Grice, Art Gartenberg, Anthony and Renee Vela, Ted and Zofia Tan, and Mark and Delilah Toberoff. I have contacted them all this week and made sure they were all supportive of the project, and they are. I can understand my neighbor has not had a home built next to him for the length of his ownership of that property, and I respect that he likes not having anyone next to him. I can completely understand that. But it is our right as a property owner to build a home that is conforming. We have not asked for any variances. In fact, we thought we were going to get approval about 9 months ago, and we were approached by the immediate neighbor, John and Ruth Littlechild at 5857, asking us to please move the home back by 7 feet. We did that. We delayed our project by 9 months by doing that. We've worked a lot with Planner Fernandez, who is tough but fair. And so we've already had a 9-month delay. We are completely conforming. We have asked for no variance. I believe that this is as clean a project as can be delivered, and my wife and I would greatly appreciate it if it would be approved tonight and not have to be delayed further. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anyone else from the team wish to speak?
Yeah.
And you are, again?
I'm Zoran Pevic.
Thank you.
And I am one of the architectural designers. This is my partner, Matt Goff, who also helped design the home. The way we approached this project was a lot different than I feel most people approach a project on this street. There is a ridge line to every property, and instead of creating a large mass on the top of that ridge line, we wanted to break up the mass of the building and sink it into the site. We also wanted to preserve the views of the building as much as possible. So we broke up the massing to allow as many views from every single living area as possible. We are conforming within the setback. We are beyond that. And the majority of the home, I would say probably like 90% of that home is under 18 feet. So the up to 28 feet, which we're still under, is only on one small section of that site. And we are not blocking any views Working with Adrian and the planning department, we thoroughly reviewed this and made sure all the neighbors were happy, along with meeting with many of the neighbors with Jason. But I'll give the floor to Matt Goff if he has anything else to say.
Hi, I'm Matt Goff here. Just want to follow up on Zoran's statements and give my support for the project as is proposed. I do think that we've made a great effort to be in dialogue with our planner and our neighbors, and I agree with Jason that we have really made a great attempt to make this as clean of a project as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the team want to speak?
Okay, I wrote my statement so that I stay within the time limit and it's clear and concise. Hi, I'm Olivia Arier. I live at 5811 Murphy Way in Malibu. I noticed in the Planning Commission document something that for the record needs correction, as there are a few inaccuracies. On page 7, there's a paragraph devoted to a description of an MRCA easement on Murphy Way. First of all, the width of Murphy Way is inaccurate. It's described as 20 feet wide, when in fact it's 12 feet in some sections. Secondarily, it's not been established that there is in fact an easement across all of Murphy Way. Thirdly, Murphy Way and West Winding Way are private streets. And fourth, the street isn't really safe for pedestrian traffic. It's actually not that it's really safe for it, it's not safe for it at all. And finally, that parking option described on PCH, it's not really adequate at all either. So I just ask that the record reflects these statements. Thank you. And also, you know, this house that we're building is really, it is really a family project. We're not a group of people who came in and said we want to build a spec home. You know, we've obviously given this a lot of thought and would love to use it ourselves and if not sell it, but it's definitely not out of characteristic with the neighborhood in any sense. And we hope you guys approve it, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Oliver Damavandi. I just want to reinforce what everybody before me said. I am in support of the project, and I know that the Planning Commission and the Planning Department have made a concerted effort lately to really make sure the homes conform within the neighborhood, and I really want you to know that we went above and beyond to really make this as much of an asset to the surrounding neighborhood as possible, as you can see per the site plan and design, and I look forward to eventually building it. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Gerard Reynaga? And you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Commissioner and fellow committee members. My name is Gerard Reynaga, and I'm here representing Deborah Domeyer Reynaga, who is the owner of the property, and my wife. Earlier today, a letter was sent via email to the Planning Department and Planning Commissioners. I would hope you all had a chance to read this letter because it expresses our concerns regarding the proposed development at 5849 Murphy Way. I would like to read the text from this letter in case you haven't had a chance to do that. January 16, 2018, Administrative Coastal Development Permit number 15-053 and Site Plan Review number 15-041, 5849 Murphy Way. Chairperson, Planning Commissioners. My name is Deborah Domeyer Reynaga. I own 5837 Murphy Way, which is immediately adjacent to 5849 Murphy Way. I request that you do not approve the Administrative Coastal Development Permit Site Plan Review for 5849 Murphy Way, and that you direct the Planning Department to schedule a full hearing on the project in order to fully assess the impacts to my home and the neighborhood and how the impacts can be mitigated. On July 3rd, 2017, I wrote to Adrian Fernandez to express my concerns and the concerns of my neighbors. The staff report does not address these concerns. The proposed house blocks island, ocean, mountain views from my house and houses of neighbors. It is also built on a ridgeline. Page 2 of the staff report acknowledges the first 18 feet of 5849 will block blue water views from my house, but when specifically addressing my house, erroneously states the portion of the residence above 18 feet would obstruct the sky above the blue ocean views. Therefore, the proposed facility will not obstruct impressive scenes of the Pacific Ocean, offshore islands, Santa Monica Mountains, canyons, valleys, or ravines from the main viewing area of the affected residence and will have less than significant visual impact. This is not correct. The proposed house blocks views of Catalina Island from my house. The photographs used to make the analysis of view impacts were not taken on a clear day. Therefore, photographs did not accurately show the views of the ocean and offshore islands from my home that will be blocked. The staff report also acknowledges that the proposed house will be visible on the ridgeline from Ramirez Canyon Road, but dismisses the impact because the house has a rear yard setback exceeding the surrounding residence. That may be the case, but I understand the larger setback is required because the property is adjacent to Asha, and property depth is longer than neighboring properties. Regardless, even with the larger setback, the house will still block views from Ramirez Canyon.
Are you almost done?
Yes, portions of the proposed residence over 18 feet will not block impressive views from 5857 Murphy Way. If you look at figure 2 and 3 in the staff report, it's clear that even moving the house 7 feet will not eliminate impacts to views of the oceans, mountains from my house, 5857 Murphy Way, or the community. We request that this application be denied and that a hearing be held by the Planning Commission after the applicant moves the house back from the ridgeline so it does not block views. Protected impressive views of the ocean, mountains, and offshore islands. Thank you for your time and consideration. Deborah Domay-Reynaga.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the commission on this item? Okay. Close the public portion. We only have one decision, people. We can ask questions, but I'm saying we only have one decision, whether to bring it back for a full hearing or not. Okay. Just wanted to remind people, since Jeff reminded us, want to keep that trend going. Yes, you may ask questions.
And John, just, I don't want to step on your toes, because you know, I had 3 items when I looked at this thing, and one was the Asha issue that John, and it came when I was reviewing this thing last night, and I looked at the picture on this large sheet 5. Right? Now, have you got that? Have you got a picture of that, or? I mean, basically, and on the left-hand side of the page, you've got this line that goes through this Asha, and it says, Edge of City mapped Asha. And I'm just, who mapped that Asha there? And were they mad at the Asha that's on the right-hand side of that line?
And can you clarify which page you're on, just for?
It was on the big, it's G.-1.4, sheet 5 of 87. And it was really the Asha, I mean, who mapped it, and how did they determine that that was where the line should be? Where did the mapping come from? That's what I don't understand.
Right, no, that's a good question. The California Coastal Commission mapped the Asha boundaries for the city back in 2002, around the time the local coastal program was adopted.
You're talking about those maps that are on the city, you can get through the city website?
Correct, those are the same maps.
There's no way in heaven you can tell me that you can identify where that line is based on those maps. It's a big green swath.
Well, we can actually, and that's because when the California Coastal Commission prepare the maps, they actually prepare the maps in GIS, Geographic Information System. And so they provided those maps to us, and we can superimpose those maps on top of aerial photos. And so,
are they available to the public?
The maps are available to the public. We have a GIS view that is available to the public on our city website. And anyone can go in there. It includes the ESHA maps, zoning, and a number of other layers.
So if I go look at that map, it's going to show me that's where that line is of ESHA.
Correct.
Because it looks like all ESHA to me.
Correct. It will show you the boundary as is shown on this exhibit.
Can I ask a related question to help you there? Did also the biologist sign off on this? Did the city biologist come to do that, like a real survey against that line, not just work off the maps?
So again, a survey was not required based on the code, and so the city biologist determined that by looking at aerial photos and looking at the information that was presented to them at the time and taking a dimension from the existing ESHA boundary to the edge of the proposed development, that it complied with the 200-foot distance requirement, and therefore a site-specific bioassessment was not required.
So, but who drew that line? Did the city biologist draw that line, or is that a line drawn by the Coastal Commission?
Coastal Commission.
Okay.
Question. I went to the GIS today, and unless there's two GISs, there was no ESHA boundaries on the city GIS. So maybe there's another map. But let me ask you a question. What is the clearance, fire clearance, required for this structure?
The walkway around the building or the fuel modification?
Fuel modification.
So the fire department would require 200, that's why 200 feet is important. So the Chapter 4 of the LIP specifically states that if a development is more than 200 feet away from ESHA, bioassessment is not required. And the 200 feet is because of the fuel modification as required by the fire department is 200 feet.
Okay, so if I'm looking at G14,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
you have a line that's, if that property is 400 feet, you have a line that's maybe 5% of that beyond the back boundary, and you say that's the ESHA line. So how can that possibly be 110 feet? That line is supposed to be 110 feet behind this back boundary, because you need 200 feet and you only have 90. So where does the rest of why the discrepancy? Now, that's, we don't know who drove the line, but it certainly looks more like, and I don't know if you can put it up there, but it's pretty obvious it's not 110 feet. Now, here's my real question. On let's see here, what's the date? April 30th, 2013. We granted a permit for the property that ESHA line is on. And at that time, the city biologist referred it to the Environmental Review Board 3 times because he claimed, and we made a finding, finding J1, also finding 5B, that the entire property was ESHA. And because of that, the property was restricted to a 10,000 square foot pad to build, and that the applicant was required to pay for mitigation. Move forward 4 years, ESHA changed, apparently, in Dave Crawford's mind, even though these are written reports. Can ESHA change from the original mapped ESHA?
As we spoke earlier today, the answer is yes. So ESHA boundaries are constantly being modified as a result of development that takes place over time. And so the fuel modification of existing houses as they get constructed further modify where the ESHA boundaries are. And so when that happens, the area where the fuel mod is no longer ESHA. And so that's what we see here. There is a gas house on the property just to the north, and that is only 30, 40 feet from the property line. So that has a 200-foot fuel modification. So obviously, the majority of that fuel modification extends into the adjacent property, as well as the house to the south also is only 130 feet from the property line. So that fuel modification extends into the adjacent property. So there's multiple properties that have fuel mods that extend into it. And as a result, parts of that adjacent property do not qualify as ESHA.
Do you have anything in your staff report or any study that shows those fuel modifications?
That a radius from the buildings, we don't have that. We just took dimensions based on area photos before the meeting.
Okay, so, and were those properties required to pay mitigation fees? I mean, it seems, what I'm asking you is, why did 6097 Murphy have to go through 3 ERB reviews and specific ESHA requirements? It doesn't seem like anybody else does, and the ESHA sort of disappeared. And it's only 4 years.
Well, again, I don't want to speak about the specifics of that project, but that the development for that is much closer to the road, and so again, I don't want to speculate as to what was actually written in the staff reports and why they make the recommendations, but I can tell you that where it's located, it has much less of an impact on ESHA because placing a house anywhere else would require a much longer driveway, which has subsequent impacts on both grading and ESHA and possibly visual impacts. But also it is closer to the road, so the fuel modification of that house overlaps with the road itself. So there is less impact as opposed to placing the house underneath a fuel modification of an adjacent house. Again, requiring a lot more grading, a lot more fuel, a lot more ESHA impacts, as well as a fuel modification that will extend still beyond the existing fuel mods of surrounding buildings.
But none of this is in the staff report.
And I can't speak to why it's not, but it should have been.
Okay.
John, I have a question. You said the setback from ESHA is not 200 feet, but it shows it on the map that it is.
Well, the property line, just so you know.
I'm just looking at the map.
This thing. He stated that the house was 90 feet. No, 90 feet from the back boundary.
Boundary of the property.
Boundary of the property, the backyard setback, rear yard setback, 90 feet.
Right, the ESHA line is out here.
Yeah.
That's 200
Okay.
feet. What it shows. I'm just saying what it shows.
Well, yeah, and you can see there's no, does that 2.5 times the other one? Who knows? It's not on the map. We don't know where the clearances are.
What? You lost me too.
Well,
I'm just trying to understand your point.
My point is, we don't know if you're clearing ESHA or not because it's not shown in the staff report. And obviously, as Steve pointed out, that line is tiny, but you can't tell the difference from the right to the left of the line. No person in the world would say that's different.
I don't follow you, but
here's your ESHA line.
Yeah, it kind of
That's well, it kind of curves, whatever. That is the same as that. Left and right of that line. So there's a question of whether it's been drawn correctly. There's also a question in my mind that the same biologist in the ERB 4 years ago said that was ESHA. So, and ESHA's ESHA.
All right, we should get into deliberations here. We should see.
No, we're not into deliberation. I'm just saying that the staff report is incomplete for me to be able to determine what's going on. That's the only point I'm trying to make.
Okay.
I had just
Yeah, please.
two quick questions. The fencing around the property, is that chain link fencing?
Your mic's
Oh, excuse me. The fencing around the property, is that chain link fencing or is that like split rail open?
Can you come to the
Just-
mic, please, just so we record it?
I don't want, I mean, I believe that there's a rule that says if you gotta have permeable, if they got permeable fencing?
If you're near Eshed, then it needs to be permeable.
Correct.
And they got that?
Correct.
Okay, so
But
that's
it's
done
not
with
shown
that
on the
one.
plans that way.
It's in the conditions of approval.
Did you have another question?
I just, one other comment, and let me just flip back. Page 9 of 26 of the report. And this is, I read this, and it says the project is consistent with the city's general plan, local coastal plan, all right? And then you go through talking about the houses, and then on the next page, page 10, somehow you start sliding off into the fact that there were a bunch of houses built, big houses up there that looks like they were built before the adoption of the general plan, and I'm just, look, my point is, I guess, when I read that, it said, why the hell am I going to someplace before? The general plan, it either agrees with the general plan or it doesn't. Houses built before that, I don't think have any impact on that. So it sort of was a path you were going down that I probably wouldn't spend a whole bunch of time doing it too many times because it doesn't say what it's. I'm on page 9 and 10 of the report.
9 and 10.
9 and 10. Page 9, the bottom of page 9, top of page 10. It's just, I just looked at it and said, if it's going to be consistent with the general plan, it should be consistent with the general plan, not with houses that were built prior under the county or whatever the heck they were built. That's my point.
And if I could, because it seems like this language is saying, hey, it looks like the rest. Yeah. But when you look at the MMC for the standards, it looks to me like it hits the ridgeline definition square on, where its elevation drops more than 10 feet in 100. So this looks like a ridgeline development, right? But it's not, there's no ridgeline analysis. That was something that caught my eye. If this is, sure, it may be like the neighbors, but we're still subject to the MMC, and that section isn't addressed in here at all. So it kind of lines up with Steve saying, it seems like the arguments on page 9 and 10 are saying, they're acting like the neighborhood, but what are the rules? And there's no reference to the rules.
I wanted to ask a question on what Steve just said. I think you meant the opposite of what you said, because it says, since the adoption of the general plan, many of the undeveloped lots have been developed, including 7 of the 8 surrounding homes. So they were developed after the general plan.
But the basic position is still, we're basing our finding 5 on the fact that there are other properties which have apparently broken these other rules, instead of saying what the rules are, and then saying we're giving a nonconformance based on the fact that these other 7 houses have done it. I mean, unless I'm reading something wrong, Jeff. What are your thoughts on that one?
The basis for the finding, I'll let Adrian elaborate. And do you want to go ahead?
It's up to you.
The issue is that the project meets the development standards today. The development standards are based on the general plan, so that's why the project is consistent with the general plan. So
My only argument was when I read it, okay, and it was late, and who knows, but I mean, I sort of got the impression that it says, larger and taller exceeding current standards. So I just get the impression that you were trying to compare some of these larger homes that may have been built prior to the general plan and using that as an excuse for this one. And I'm saying that to me is not an argument that you want to go down, but maybe you weren't doing that, maybe I read it wrong.
No, what I was actually doing is trying to give you a summary of something, a description of the neighborhood that I found in the general plan. So that paragraph is language that I found in the general plan when the general plan was doing their reconnaissance on various neighborhoods in the city. And so I wanted you to have the information. This is how the general plan described the area, and this is how the neighborhood has evolved since. And however, the proposed residence is consistent with other houses in terms of the other houses being, the majority of the houses in that on that street have been developed since the general plan in conformance with the municipal code requirements and some of them with the local coastal program requirements.
Okay.
I just want to comment that I'm surprised Trevor hasn't commented yet. We're getting into details.
Okay.
And I think.
We are indeed.
The important thing is, I do not believe that the staff report includes adequate analysis for us to make these decisions. And that I would support bringing it back with a complete analysis.
Are you making a motion?
I guess you make motions, yeah.
Yeah, motion to bring it back as a full CDP.
Okay. Is there a second on that? Okay, it's gonna die if you don't, you're sitting there tapping your fingers?
I'd second it for a vote, yeah.
Okay. We have a motion. Any further discussion, or are we gonna vote?
What do you want to bring back? I mean, what is it that
I want to know
what's
about
going to change? What's going to change the house? That's what I want to know.
The fuel modification, the location of the Asha, the neighborhood standards, the site plan review, and probably a bunch of other stuff. I mean, we don't have enough here to know all those, and we're supposed to make these findings. And for example, as you said about neighborhood standards,
you're supposed to review what I've already approved, and
right, and we're supposed to say that your findings have a reason in the staff report to be approved, and I don't see it because there's missing information. That's basically by motion.
Okay, well,
and I base it on findings made on the adjacent property that is the Asha.
Okay, well, then let's see what the other commissioners.
Well, and
There's no doubt in my mind that the staff's analysis is correct and that the staff report is complete. However, we have a neighbor who is objecting to the project and is objecting on an erroneous basis because the problem is that we do not look at the 18 feet, the first 18 feet to see whether that obstructs a view. It may well obstruct your view, and that's life in Malibu. We don't count that first 18 feet. But whenever there is a project that is at least semi-controversial and there's a neighbor who wants to object to it, and because the turnaround can be so quick on bringing something like this back for a CDP, I wouldn't support it, but I don't have any objection to the three of you bringing it back for a CDP.
And I just want to clarify, I mean, because when I was reviewing the rules on, specifically what's got my attention is that, do we need a ridgeline review? Because when I read the definition and I look at the topography on the map here, this looks like, I interpret it as secondary ridgeline, primary, or whatever. How does that influence the plan? Am I just flat out wrong in that assumption? I mean, I'm just reading what the code says. So any guidance on that?
It's because the ridge line is developed. That becomes the issue in this neighborhood. We've battled this many times in previous, in this neighborhood, we've battled that's a ridge line over a number of projects, John and I in particular, and we've lost every time because it's developed enough that it's now an abolished ridge line. So I feel like my feeling on ridge lines is pretty sensitive personally, but we've lost that argument every time.
And so that's why the write-up went around the neighborhood, kind of that area, the general plan, calling out that specific winding way to butts being of that nature already. That's why that's why it focused there. So just to play it back,
it's also included in the ridgeline standards. It's explicitly called out that developed neighborhoods are not included in the standard
on the coastal plain.
And
but
that's
it's
as
not
much
in
as
the
I want it
staff
to be
report. But it's not in the staff report. I'm just saying that the staff report doesn't have all the information to make the findings that are here.
All right, let's have a vote on this. Kathleen, would you do roll call, please?
Commissioner Mazza,
Yes.
Vice Chair Marks,
yes.
Commissioner Jennings, yes. Commissioner Euring, Commissioner Euring, Chair Pearson,
No.
motion carries.
Do we have any timeline on that, or is that something that has to be set up?
We've got a we'll have to look at our agendas. I don't know if we can turn it around for February 5th. We'll look at what comes after that.
And one other question, sorry. Trevor, any guidance on interacting with the applicant? Is that allowed, or?
We haven't had, there'll be a public hearing on this. There's been no public hearing that's been closed at this point. So again, I caution you against any type of ex parte contacts. I think we've been over the conditions, the issues with that. Make sure that if you have any contact that is disclosed before the public hearing, so it can be, any information you receive, there will be evaluated.
Then can I make an observation in public here? Just in looking at the properties that were selected for comparison to establish neighborhood character, there were probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 others that are within 500 feet that could have been put in the applicant's favor that I think would help their case. So that's just one observation. When looking at that, within 500 feet of the property, there's more there than was presented.
I just wanted to add one other thing when you come back. When the ridgeline discussion came up probably 15 years ago, I did research, a lot of research, because I'm the guy that had to pay for it. And the trail was dedicated during the subdivision. And it includes all the lots in the subdivision. Maybe some of the lots are outside of the subdivision, but it was dedicated and accepted by MRCA.
Wait, I'm sorry, that brings up, I hate to delay this more. You paid for something in this neighborhood? Do you have to recuse yourself then?
No, it was had to do with whether it was a ridge line. Of course, there were no houses up there at the time, but it got very few, but it got declared that there are no ridge lines in Malibu.
Yes, Adrian, you have what you need to bring back stuff for John? Okay.
Do, thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do a 21-day notice for this, so it'll probably be in March.
Okay, we're moving on. Item 4B, Coastal Development Permit Number 16-050, Stringline Modification Review Number 16-004, and Demolition Permit Number 17-032, an application for a partial demolition, addition, and interior and exterior remodel of an existing beachfront single-family residence and associated development at 27218 Pacific Coast Highway. May we have a report, please?
Of course. The subject property takes access from Escondido Road, a private road, and abuts Pacific Coast Highway to the north. Just give me 1 second.
You all right there?
Oh, maybe I can use this on. No. On the aerial? Yeah, I'm not sure what's. This is moving. That the one on the monitors isn't moving.
Let's try starting this over. Yeah.
Just so this doesn't happen with my person. All right, there we go.
That should be good.
Okay.
Hopefully not.
All right. Here we go. The project is for a demolition of 146 square feet, 579 square foot of addition, and exterior and interior remodel of an existing 2-story beachfront residence. The project includes a stringline modification review to allow the first and second floor deck extensions to use an alternate deck corner on the property to the east rather than the most adjacent corner. The stringline modification would permit a 7.4 square foot extension to the first floor deck and a 31.5 square foot extension to the second floor deck. The proposed decks are in line with existing decks on adjacent properties and follow the beach profile. Here are the additions. Here are some photographs of the story poles representing the proposed modifications to the residence as well as additions. That concludes my presentation. I have other slides to show the Planning Commission for reference. The applicant and I are available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can disclosures, please?
I visited the site, met with the architect. I visited the site, met with the architect, just to get a perspective of the height of the building and the string line adjustment. Didn't learn anything that really isn't in the staff report.
I spoke with Adrian about the calculations on the 50% removal. I'll go through the conclusion he and I came to, or sort of came to during the question period.
Chair, I got just one disclosure.
Okay.
No, go ahead, John. You done? I don't mean to cut you off.
Isn't that a disclosure?
Yeah, John, if you can disclose that.
Disclose it now.
Okay. If you could put up 01, Plan 01. Okay. This is the plot plan of the top floor and the bottom floor. The red is being taken away. The green is being added. I compared that with 03. If you could put up 03. Is that 03? I guess it is. If you compare the two, they do not include the same areas as 01. Namely, we're at 44% calculation using these red areas. But this area here is being removed. It does not have, but it's not in the calculation. If you include it in the calculation, you go over 50%, which defeats the purpose of a remodel. Adrian told me, which we disagree on, that for somehow they claim that this was illegally built, and therefore if they remove it, it's not an exterior wall. We disagreed on that. So that's basically the disclosure. Now, a lot of the green areas, we never got the additions. We never got to that because in my mind, it went over 50%, and I didn't need to deal with all the other areas that weren't measured. So we can deal that in our questions. That's what I learned.
Commissioner Massa, did you say you had made a decision that it's not over 50%, or that you had considered there were issues with it?
Adrian and I agreed that it was over 50% if you counted this. So I didn't make the decision. We were talking about how you calculate 50%.
But you haven't made up your mind at this point in time, have you? You're still willing to listen to the
I'm willing
discussion?
to listen to anything. I'm just saying what we talked about.
So this is a potential issue for you, but you have not reached a full conclusion yet?
I'm just disclosing what we talked about. It wasn't in a hearing.
Okay.
Okay. And I just have one more. What I did, and hanging around, sitting next to you, John, has made you smarter, because I got the same thing. I wrote an email to the architect just asking him about that wall and how come it wasn't counted, all right? And I got a response back. It appears, he said, it was not part of the originally approved structure. Planning is asking us to remove it, and it does not count toward the exterior wall calculations. That's what I've got. So I was just trying to get smarter.
I got to add to something. So I asked him, how do you know? Are there any old permits? How do you know it wasn't part of it? And the answer is we don't have any.
Vice Chair Marks?
No disclosures.
And no disclosures for me other than I know the street, I know the property from living right near there for many years when I was younger, and that's it.
Anything that you've learned from that experience that you're relying on tonight?
That I'm relying on tonight? No, one of the girls that acted in the Brady Bunch lived there. She was really hot when I was young. So that's why I was down there a great deal. Jan, yeah, it was Jan. Oh, man. Gorgeous. Anyhow, you asked. I wanted disclosure. So, questions? Jeff?
Well, I have questions, but let's do the public hearing first.
Okay. Any questions before public hearing? No. Okay. With that, we'll open the public hearing. And we have one speaker, and it's for questions, and it is the architect. It is Wayne. Would you like to speak?
Yeah. Hi. Good evening. I'm just here, for questions. I don't have a formal presentation, but I'd like to address the section that we're sort of talking about here that's being removed. We actually do have the original approved plans from the 60s, which we were required to get from the archives in order to make these determinations. So I believe they do have it. I've got a copy at my office. I believe Adrian has it. And the instruction was that because that portion was not part of the originally permitted house, it was to be removed and also not included in the exterior wall calcs. So that's what we're proposing, and that's what.
And what I'd also like to clarify is that the wall that's shown as solid, that John, you're talking about, is not counted. The reason it's not counted is because it's still there. So that wall is going to stay there. They're going to take off the illegal part. Yes.
So what's between that wall and that wall?
I don't know the answer to that, but I know that wall is still there.
Yeah, it appears to be perhaps an HVAC plenum or something. It's kind of a void, but that existing interior wall is existing. It's there. There's no openings in it. And that exterior wall that we're demoing is also there, unknown, sort of what's in that space.
Okay, Bonnie, if, okay.
Hey, I'm going to close the public hearing, but we can ask you back for questions, obviously. Unless there's anyone else that wants to address us on this item. Okay, we're closed. Back here.
Bonnie, if a house comes in, there was an old house from the 50s, 60s, 70s, up to 93. And it does not have a set of permits for it that match what's there. Are you saying that we are required to make them take it away? Because I've been to many hearings where that's never come up.
We do our best to match up existing conditions with permits and photos and any kind of evidence to make sure that, for example, in a case like this, we would not be allowing remodeling of something that wasn't allowed to be there in the first place. So I can't answer you with absolute certainty because it would depend on the particular context. We do our best, and applicants will tell you that we ask for a lot of information.
Okay, so somebody comes in with a house.
I do love hypotheticals. That's
Well,
my
I'm
favorite.
trying to determine consistency because I've been on the planning commission a long time.
Yes.
And I do not remember ever saying, hey, you didn't get a permit for that, take it out. Ever. Okay? Now, maybe I'm wrong on some of that, but it's been a long time.
Yes,
okay?
it has
So
happened
all of a
before.
sudden, here we go, it's different. So that's my question, has it changed? If somebody walks in with a house that's 3,800 square feet and you go look back and the permit is 2,800 square feet,
There's some
do we
explaining
whack
to do.
1,000 feet off of it?
Not automatically. Like I'm saying, we will do as much due diligence as we can reasonably do to confirm that something is allowed to be there.
Okay, but
And yes, we have required people, the commission has required people to remove things before that we couldn't find some permit justification for.
It seems like quite a few times in my memory, my time here.
I don't remember it. Now, do we have any evidence in the file? I know he's got it. Do we?
I don't know. I'm not as familiar with the file as Adrian is, so what's your concern here?
Well, my
the
concern is,
as we mentioned, the other option is they can include it as an after-the-fact addition. It's a beachfront property, so there's not a TDSF issue. And then if it is included, then there's more flexibility. They actually gain exterior walls. So
No, I don't mind, I'm just after consistency here. A remodel's a big deal. When you go
Yes.
over 50%, it's a big deal,
Yes.
okay? It appears that if we didn't know whether that was legal or not, and they remove it, they're going over 50%. That's what Adrian told me. Now, so my question
I
is,
don't think that's. I'm not gonna. I wasn't party to your conversation, so I'll let Adrian
okay, so
say this.
my question here is, I'm not trying to make him take it away. I see no evidence either way, but I know it's an exterior wall right now. So without evidence, I'd say you got to keep it. You can't take it down, because if you take it down, you don't qualify, unless there's some evidence that you do, and I don't see any evidence you do. So I want to stay under the remodel, so we don't have to do this whole thing over again.
Can't we condition it to cover that issue?
What? Take it down or put it back?
No, I mean, if they've completely made this up and, Wayne says they have proof, if there's some proof that that's erroneous, can't we set a condition on that?
Well, the question is, do we make that decision or somebody else?
Adrian, have you seen the plans?
Yeah, if I can just speak to this issue. So what we were talking about earlier is whether there are permits to show an addition to that sliver. And the answer to that earlier today was no, there's no evidence of a building permit for the addition. We do have the original building plans from the 60s, and that was very important for us because there is a portion of the building where the garage is that has a 0 setback. And so we questioned the setback early because we also thought that that portion may have been illegally added to the building. They actually provided us with the drawings to demonstrate that the house was actually approved with a 0 side yard setback, and that the garage actually was originally approved the way it is now. In those plans, it was also determined that there was a portion of the building on that portion that we're discussing now that was added to the building. And like Mr. Chevalier was saying, the original wall is still there. And so we are asking them to remove an unpermitted portion of their building because we have no evidence to show that that was actually permitted. So we're asking them to remove it and expose the original exterior walls that still remains there. And so that will basically rectify the code violation. Now, as an option, they're also more than willing to keep that exterior wall if the commissioner wants to keep that exterior wall and allow for that addition now, because like Bonnie was saying, they will now have more exterior wall to remain, which will allow them to have more flexibility on the other walls to be removed. So either scenario, they're okay with, but it was staff who requested that they remove that portion of the building because we verified that we couldn't verify that it was legal. There were no building permits and there were no subsequent approvals that would show that it was a legal addition.
Okay, so I understand that. That sounds good. You have the evidence. It'd been nice if you'd put it in the staff report so we could figure it out. So, last question. You have the plans as approved in 65. Is there anything else on that property, on that building as it stands now, that are not on the original approvals?
That was the only thing.
That's the only thing. So that answers my question. I don't have a problem.
Okay, can I ask a question more out of curiosity? So if we allowed that illegally built exterior wall to remain, that means the original exterior wall becomes an interior wall, which you could remove and have a, okay.
Bigger room.
Interesting. Okay, I just wanted to verify that. Any more discussion? Oh, Jeff, please.
impression this was about the string line modification, but can you put up the additional material you had? I have to admit, in reading the staff report, I was a little unclear in how you were calculating the, or the reasons were you were using to what's the matter?
Oh, do you want the laser?
No, just to calculate the nearest corner that you were going to use for the deck string line.
So here's the survey and also site plan showing this is the subject property and these are the two adjacent buildings. The nearest adjacent up coast corner deck is here, and the nearest adjacent corner on the down coast property is here. And so what the applicant's proposing is to use the alternate corner, which is here. Now, this deck is parallel to the road, but the street profile is being modified to account for a drainage that is a couple properties just down coast from the subject property. And so as part of the justifications is that they are using alternative corner, but they're also, following the natural beach profile that's already occurring on that side of the beach. Now, the adjacent building is built closer to the road, and so is the next one over. So it has that natural development that sort of follows the drainage that's on two properties down coast.
So the property down coast has no view, no up coast view as things stand, right?
View to what?
The property, the down coast property to the right there.
This property here?
Is blocked, their up coast view is blocked by the bulk of the house, correct?
Correct. So currently, they're actually demolishing a portion of the building on the first floor that's here, and they're making that an exterior deck. And so actually by moving forward with this application is going to open up a little bit more of the neighbors' views.
All right, well, I think I'm most persuaded by the beach profile argument that you showed in that you did have in the photographs, the aerial photograph. But, okay, thank you.
Adrian, we're talking 40 square feet, something like that. It's not a huge change, right?
I'm not sure what my numbers are. Yeah, it was 31 and a half feet, I think, and about, 7 feet on the other deck.
Now, when the next house comes along, that's the house down coast, comes along to get bigger, they're not stuck with our decision here, right?
So when the
They have
next
to go
down
on
coast
the
property?
As far as the string line is determined by the house farther south.
So the string line is established by both adjacent buildings. So up coast and down coast properties.
Okay.
Any more discussion, or can we have a motion?
I move we approve staff's recommendation.
Second.
If there's no more discussion, roll call, please.
Commissioner Mazza?
Yes.
Commissioner Euring?
Yes.
Commissioner Jennings? Yes. Vice Chair Marks?
Yes.
Chair Pearson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. And we're on to item 5A, Coastal Development Permit number 14-082, an application for the construction of a new single-family residence, swimming pools, guest house, pool house, sports court, and on-site wastewater treatment system at 30385 Morning View Drive. May we have a report, please? Already got this.
Good evening, Chair Pearson and members of the Planning Commission. The project before you tonight is new residential development on a vacant lot at 30385 Morning View Drive. The application was processed as an ACDP and was issued on December 12, 2017 and reported to the Planning Commission on December 18th. The previous report erroneously references conformance with the Malibu Municipal Code development standards, and it should be noted that because no discretionary requests are being made, the project is not subject to the municipal code, and the agenda report prepared for tonight omits this reference. So on December 18th, the Planning Commission directed staff to process the application as a regular CDP, and we're bringing it back for your consideration tonight. The subject property is a 3.9 acre flag lot in the RR2 zoning district. The site is vacant, and as you can see in the aerial photo, is larger than most of the neighboring properties. This table only considers adjacent lots. It does not go to a certain radius. Most of the adjacent residences are smaller, older homes on smaller lots. The project involves construction of an 18-foot high single-family residence with a basement and a detached garage, a detached 18-foot high guest house and pool house that's connected by a trellis, swimming pools, a spa and water feature, and a tennis court, on-site wastewater treatment system, and grading walls and auto gates. The project conforms with all LIP development standards, including setbacks, total development square footage, heights, and impermeable coverage. No discretionary requests are included. The development also conforms with the 2-acre convex development standard. The site is relatively flat, and all development is proposed on areas with 3-to-1 slopes or flatter. 982 cubic yards of non-exempt grading is proposed, which is below the 1,000 cubic yard maximum. A 1,000 square foot basement would house a gym and is excluded from the TDSF because it is 1,000 square feet, and the initial 1,000 square feet of basements are excluded. The basement would be completely below the footprint of the residence, and no exterior access such as a light well is proposed. This photo is taken at the end of the flag portion of the lot as you're entering the property. You can see the residence on the left, the pool house and the guest house in the background, and the garage to the right. And this photo is sort of in between the residence as you're heading towards the garage facing north, and then this is looking northeast from the west side of the property. So the garage is on the other side of this this hill. This view is looking west towards the ocean from the northeast corner of the property. 11 letters of support were submitted today. 3 letters were submitted from the same adjacent neighbor. 1 email exchange was included in the previous agenda report packet, expressing concerns regarding landscaping, obstructing his private views. He also sent a letter that also expressed those concerns, and then later this afternoon, an email was submitted stating that issues have been resolved with revisions, and that most recent letter should have been routed to you prior to the hearing tonight. So the issue regarding this neighbor concerns proposed sycamores in the northwest corner of the property, as shown, let's see, here, as well as 4 proposed sugar bush plants, which would eventually form a hedge. The neighboring property is over here. And these plants could potentially obscure his views of the ocean. Speaking with the applicant and the neighbor, the applicant did agree to remove the sycamores from the landscape plan and to consider substitutions for the sugar bush shrubs, which can grow up to 12 feet. So when they submit for a plan check, they will have those trees removed and would consider lower growing shrubs to replace the sugar bush. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 1803, approving CDP number 14082, with the new condition for the applicant to submit a revised landscaping plan that shows the removal of the California sycamore trees in the northwest corner of the property, and to substitute the sugar bush plants with a lower growing shrub, also in the northwest corner of the property. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Disclosures, please.
I spoke with Bonnie this afternoon regarding my concern about the landscape plan, and she advised me that apparently that had been worked out, and I hadn't seen the email till that time, but apparently it has been worked out. That's my only discussion.
Okay.
I visited the property with Chair Pearson, and we met with the applicant, walked the property, got a perspective of what it was, got a perspective of the surrounding properties. Didn't learn much that was in the staff report.
I visited the property with Chris Marks. Exactly the same routine as Steve and you.
And as disclosed, I visited with the applicant and John, and didn't learn anything new.
As Mr. Uring said, we visited the property before the first hearing on this and learned nothing that's not in the staff report. Any questions of staff before we open the hearing?
I have a question. Take me through the non-municipal code component of this thing, because that one of the questions I had, and I was looking, I went through a somewhat circuitous route to get there, but I was trying to find where it said Malibu Municipal Code in either the staff report or the resolution, and it's not there. And I don't know how that works. So.
Just before you explain that, I got a little addition to that. Why was it there last time?
My understanding is that it was in there by error. This is a coastal development permit application, and there are no findings required. No entitlements were sought under the municipal code.
Yes.
Say that again?
It's an application for a coastal development permit, which is issued per the local coastal program. So you're looking for conformance with the LIP. There are no entitlements that were requested pursuant to the Malibu Municipal Code in this situation.
As you know, the LIP takes precedent over the municipal code unless the municipal code is more restrictive. How would we know whether or not it was more restrictive if nobody looked at it?
Well, there's no conflict here because there's no entitlement that's sought under, they're not asking for anything under the municipal code. It's only a coastal development permit is the only request that has been made in the application.
How do we know there's not something in the municipal code that is more restrictive than the LIP that you don't ask for?
Yeah, they're not bound by the municipal code in this situation. They're asking for a permit that's issued stating that they're in conformance with the Coastal Act pursuant to our local coastal plan. So the application here is seeking a coastal development permit, and for a coastal development permit, which that's all they're seeking here, they're not requesting anything that needs an entitlement under the municipal code. There's no municipal code findings that need to be made for the approval of this application. In order to approve this application, you need to be able to make the findings for the coastal development permit, which are laid out in here. And under those findings, they don't require any conformance with the municipal code.
Now, let me ask you this. If the municipal code says you need certain kind of plumbing, and it's not in the LIP, there's no plumbing code in the LIP, how does the LIP cover that?
Well, what you're talking about is our building permits, and under the coastal development permit, they'll be required to have compliance with the building code. And so because of that, they're going to have to comply with the building code as a condition.
Yeah, the Coastal Act doesn't cover the building code. That's a municipal function.
Yeah, but say, for example, the LIP allowed 10-foot fences and we only allowed 8-foot fences. How would we know that?
Well, it doesn't. I mean, the issue is that if this were a project that, for example, required or asked for a discretionary request, such as a site plan review, the site plan review findings in the municipal code do come into play. The municipal code specifically calls for that. In this case, there is no site plan review, so the municipal code doesn't come into play. Is there a specific issue under the municipal code that you're concerned about in terms of a development standard?
My problem is, I don't know, because you haven't told me. And
as you know,
we just skipped what Malibu requires, and we just say Coastal Commission, whatever you say goes.
The Coastal Commission, as you know, pulled all of the development standards for the local coastal program from the municipal code, so they basically match. The differences are areas where the Coastal Commission or the Coastal Act doesn't have any concerns, such as private view impacts. Here, the project doesn't affect any private views because it's no higher than 18 feet. So there are certain areas where what the two documents cover is different, but this project doesn't get into any of those discretionary areas.
Didn't those trees have a view blockage?
Which?
The trees that they're replacing.
That was, yes, that was a.
And they didn't sign off on moving
review.
the trees until today. So how did you do that a week ago?
I mean, that's a good question. Sometimes, I mean, that's why neighbors their input is important on things like this.
But I'm saying a week ago, he
plans.
still had his complaint for the trees.
Mm-hmm.
And a week ago, you issued the permit saying that municipal code didn't count, when in fact, because they had the complaint for the trees, it would have counted. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
So you guys are prescient. You see the future.
We do our best to anticipate where there's going to be an issue.
Well, that's...
Okay, can we open the public hearing? Okay, I got a yes. So we're gonna open the public hearing now. We have the applicant team and one other speaker. The applicant team is, it's Don and Fred. You have 15 minutes. You may reserve time for rebuttal, as you well know.
And I just might do that. I'm going to apologize. I'm losing my voice. You guys have been making me work a lot lately. If there's any snickering, I'm just going to remind all 5 of you when you went through puberty and the abuse that you took. Also, before we start our presentation, if I could just have one point of clarification. We did work things out with the neighbor. As far as the specifics of the trees that he wanted to be removed, that came up today. Mr. Ball communicated that to us, and we agreed to do that, which is why his objections were removed. So I'd like to see if Mr. Gaines and I can start this off and get it done within 10 minutes. So if you'll set the clock at 10 minutes, and we'll take it from there, see how we can do. So for the record, Commissioners, my name is Don Schmitz. I'm here on behalf of the applicants. I want to thank you for your time. You're familiar with the property. It is a very large property. It is in the top 95th percentile. It's almost large enough to be subdivided. It's almost twice the size of the minimum lot size in the area. It is an extremely flat piece of property. It's historically disturbed. It was used as an equestrian facility by the neighbors and by the property owners in the past. There's absolutely no slopes, which are site plan review slopes or minor modifications or anything of that basis. I'll move quickly in regards to the design layout because that's already been covered by your staff and you are familiar with it. It is a beautiful low silhouette design. It's an 18-foot tall home. It is not something which is massive or obtrusive for the neighbors or for the neighborhood. The elevations bear that out, as do the plans. But there's a history here, Commissioners. In 2009, you approved a project on this property for almost an identical same-sized house with a pool and spa and landscaping and everything else. And it was an administrative coastal development permit, and it was not pulled. And yes, Mr. Mazza, you've been on this commission a long time, and you voted to go ahead and allow this project to proceed with an administrative coastal development permit. Now, this is the westerly elevation of the project that was approved. There's the westerly elevation that we're proposing now. And as you can see, the bulk and the mass of what is being proposed is much less than what you already approved on the same site. This is the north elevation. That's the architectural plans for our north elevation. That is the silhouette of the north elevation of our house in comparison of what you already approved. This is the south elevation. This is what we're proposing now. And there it is superimposed. You see a common theme here. The bulk is less than what you already found consistent with every aspect of your code. The square footage of the house was larger. The basement was the same. The garage was essentially the same. We took the square footage that they had massed into the overall size of the house, and we have the two small structures of the pool house and the guest house. And the total development square footage is almost identical. This previously approved project was valid when our clients bought the property, but your staff considered it to be essentially administratively withdrawn, as referenced in the staff report, when they made the application for the smaller bulk house. The current project was submitted in December of 2014. We've been working on this for 3 years. They have spent over $1 million on designing and redesigning this home to make it picture perfect and concise with your code. As your staff has already talked about, it absolutely complies with every aspect of your codes. It complies, and accordingly, staff recommends approval and consistency. It is a clean sheets project. You know what that means. There's no discretionary review required here, which is why your staff brought it forward as an approved administrative coastal development permit. It has the health department approval for an advanced on-site wastewater treatment system, even though it's not close to any water body. There were some questions on a site visit in regards to the design of the fire department access. It's a 20-foot wide road. The hydrant is being installed there and the water main extended. We have the hammerhead turnaround. We have to have 150-foot length, we have to have 150-foot walk around on all portions of the property, which is why we needed the second spur of the road. And this animation will show you how that works. That's a 5-foot open to the sky fire department access. And this is as fast as the animation would go, so I can't bark at my associates about this. We have the public works approval, we have geology approval, we have biology approval. There is nothing that even closely resembles Asha or any native trees on the side. We have conformance with every department, and we spent 3 years and a hell of a lot of money to get that here. What about visual impacts? There are none, as referenced in the staff report. What about Harvester Road or Zuma Ridge Trail? I'll move quickly on this because you can't see it. It's not visually obtrusive. It's not a little bit obtrusive. You just can't see it at all from the Zuma Ridge Trail. What about the surrounding streets? None of these surrounding streets are designated scenic highways in the municipal code, not that that's applicable, in the LCP, in any way, shape, or form. There's one corner you can see to the southeast, a very nominal amount. That's the corner that you would have seen from the project you already approved. So what we're proposing now is actually far less in regards to any sort of visual impacts than what you already approved on the property. And as you proceed down Morning View Drive, go back to that, you can see the house, but again, the house is much less in bulk and it's a very nominal view, and Morning View Drive is not a designated public scenic highway. I'll just continue quickly as we go up around Morning View Drive and up Phillip. You simply cannot see this house from public viewing areas. There's one spot here on Flores Height, where you can see a little bit of it. But the neighborhood is fine with this project. You have 11 support letters. You had the one objection from our immediate neighbor, and I'm glad to say that we were able to get everything worked out with them. So the public view determination is solid. This project is consistent with LIP Chapter 6. It will not have deleterious impacts on any public view sheds. This is a beautiful home. It is a clean sheets project. When my clients bought this property, they could have built the house that you had already approved. It had a valid coastal development permit. They've come in and they have redesigned it so that it is a lower silhouette and much more sensitive to the surrounding view shed. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Gaines, and we will retain the remainder of the time for rebuttal.
My clients
attempted to do a clean sheets project without a land use attorney. They didn't have one until after your last hearing, but they have one now, because at the last hearing, there were members of it seemed that there were members of the commission who thought that you could take broad general language out of the preamble or mission statement of the municipal code and apply it to contradict and overrule the specific directives of the codes of the city of Malibu. To do so would be illegal. I hate to tell you this, you're not the first to think of this, and the courts have rejected it when it's come up in the past. The Friends of Davis case, in the interpretation of written laws, the intent of the legislative body is not gleaned from introductory statements such as a preamble, but is gleaned from the law as a whole, which includes particular directives. It's known as the canon of, pardon my Latin, justum generis. The enumeration of specific items or factors will be controlling over general statements placed before or after the list of specific items. The state Supreme Court has made it clear, the Orange Citizens case, persons who seek to develop their land are entitled to know what the applicable law is at the time they apply. City officials must be able to act pursuant to the law, and the courts must be able to ascertain the law's validity and to enforce it. So when you have specifics in your code, and you ask applicants to come up with that clean sheet, comply, 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 the fact that there's a statement in the preamble that says something like, protect and maintain the overall low-density residential nature of the community and preserve the integrity and character of the residential neighborhoods, that is part of the preamble of the zoning code. But it doesn't, and then to do that, you've developed your specific rules, and you've asked property owners to try and follow those rules. You've asked their lawyers and consultants to advise them the best they can on how to comply with those rules, and when they comply, the law requires you, in your quasi-judicial role, today you are judges applying facts to law, not advocates for new positions. I am, as you might imagine, I am a strong supporter of home rule and local control. Pass whatever laws you like here in the city of Malibu. But the ones that are on the books, today in your quasi-judicial role, you're here to apply exactly as they're written to this case. And you know that. You know that's what you're supposed to do in this case. And that's all that we ask you to do. We'll save the rest of our time for rebuttal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Shen Schultz.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Shen Schultz. I'm a Malibu resident since 1979. I'm a licensed California real estate broker. I live at 6561 Doom Drive. I'm here to speak in favor of this project. All of you have been business people before you were commissioners, and you know, as well as I do, that good deals happen with good people. This is a sophisticated project. This is a property that is extremely well organized and well executed. These are excellent people that should be able to build on their property and do what they want. I have no dog in the fight. I'm not their broker. I am here as a citizen to speak in favor of land use rights. Just for clarification, a real estate broker is a warden of the state for fair housing. Agents work for brokers. So I'm here just to tell you guys that this community resident standards characterization is a difficult and I think challenging path to go down. There's a good example of a house that's in Malibu West on a double lot that's 2 stories that is a bit of an eyesore. I live at 6561 Doom, and the house next to me at 559 has been being built for 16 years. It's a nightmare, okay? So, I mean, in general, I think you guys are making a huge mistake for the city council to turn modestly scaled residential development into expensive gambles. I think you'll face a lot of litigation, and there's a lot more better things that you could do with the money for the city. It hurts all of the locals, it hurts the brokers, pushes down the prices. If I can't tell somebody what they can build on a house on Selfridge that's been owned for 50 years by a family, and if in general I could say it's 11,200 square feet, but if I don't know, I'm going to call a professional like Don Schmitz or Doug Burge, and they're going to walk in and tell this buyer what they can do. But if they have to go through a popularity contest and not be able to tell a buyer what they can do, that buyer, if they're wealthy enough, is going to take a pass on that 2,000 square foot house and go buy the monstrosity down the road that's 6,000 square feet and remodel that. So I'm not here to tell you that what you should or shouldn't do, but you should definitely look at the majority of this path that you guys are going with neighborhood character is just, I think, a bad one. So in general, you guys have made mistakes in the past. If you look at Malibu Park, am I out of time or 30 seconds? I have a listing at 30333 Morning View Drive. It's 11,000 square feet. It's on 5 acres. It's not a pretty house. It's this project that they want to build is going to be probably one of the most beautiful homes in Malibu, and it's totally conforming. So to even have a planning commission issue on this house, I think is just out of line. Thank you.
Thank you. Don, Fred, you still have 5 minutes, I believe.
Thank you, Commissioners. Before you start the clock, let's get back to where we were in the PowerPoint presentation. Again, for the record, Don Schmitz. The facts. It is an extremely flat, disturbed site. It's completely consistent with every aspect of the code. It's highly disturbed. There's no slopes, which are site plan review slopes or minor modification slopes or variant slopes, none whatsoever. It conforms with every aspect of every department. Fire department, geology and soils, health department, the list goes on. And it, again, was a very expensive process to make sure that we were crossing the T's and dotting the I's. It is a clean sheets project. There is no significant public view impacts whatsoever. The previous approved project was valid when our clients bought this property, and it was taller and more massive, and it did not have the low silhouette that is in front of you today, which is illustrated by the elevations, as you can see here if you were watching the presentation, to the north and to the east and to the west, and the south elevation as well. It is almost identical in regards to the size of the project that you already approved in 2009. The square footage and the grading is almost identical, except it's a less massive design in regards to any sort of visual impacts. There have been no changes to the residential development standard code provisions in the LCP or the municipal code for that matter since 2009, when the first administrative coastal development permit was approved by this planning commission. The law has not changed, Commissioners. It's not changed at all. And you already approved a larger, more massive type of scope for the previous project. Why are we concerned about the neighborhood? The neighborhood is in support of this application. You have 11 letters of support. You have somebody who comes and speaks in support of it. You guys are veterans of this. How often do you see a house of any significance come before you where there's not a legion of people coming to speak in opposition to it? And I didn't go down the rabbit hole with you in regards to the surrounding houses. The staff gave you numbers for the houses immediately adjacent, but 2 properties over, there's a house that's over 11,000 square foot immediately to the east. 2 houses to the southwest, there's a house that's almost 11,000 square foot. You know Malibu very well. This is a very eclectic neighborhood. It has some small, older homes, and it has some of the largest homes that are in Malibu, period. It's a mix. It's a very eclectic mix. As Mr. Stacy has already testified, you cannot take verbiage from the general plan and use that as a basis for denial. You just can't do that. And as a pretty important man by the name of John Adams said one time, we're a nation of laws, not of men. And I want to speak to that because I know each and every one of you, all 5 of you, feel very passionately about our community. You come here and you dedicate your time, you volunteer it, you read through all this information, and you want to do what's best for the community. But you all took an oath to uphold the laws of the city and to faithfully implement those laws. And those laws and those codes are enumerated in our local coastal program. And you have your professional staff, which wrote this staff report and the one before, and they're telling you this is a clean sheets project that is not discretionary. Now, I know you're grappling with the fact that this community, our council, which is the actual legislative body of Malibu, not this planning commission, is thinking about changing some of those rules. But they haven't done that yet. In fact, all 5 of you sat up here with all 5 council members where they had a workshop on it, and they have staff studying it. But just last Wednesday, 3 of you, a quorum, were here in front of the city council speaking in opposition to a project. And you heard Mayor Peak say, if this house that's before us right now was single story, 18 feet in height, it was 9,000 square foot, that was roughly the size of that house, we would have to approve it. It wouldn't have even gone to site plan review. And that's exactly the case that's before you tonight. This is a 1-story, 18-foot tall, clean sheets project. It is not discretionary. It is before you. Staff is recommending approval, and essentially that is exactly what you have to do.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that has not addressed us that would like to? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing and first ask who Mr. Stacy is. Is that Stacy right there? Is that your nickname? Okay. And quickly, okay. And Shen, you made some comments to hideous houses. We don't get to judge whether a house is hideous or not. So I know you know that, but there are some hideous houses that have been approved, and it's not my fault, I promise. It's these guys, and it's not me. Okay, so we're back here for discussion questions.
Just have 2 comments, or 2 or 3. That one, I know there are 11 letters. Most of the ones I read are not from people who live next door to these. We get them from Point Doom, so I don't know how many you actually got from people that live next to the project. I don't know that. Okay, well, there weren't 11. I mean, you hit me with 11, weren't 11. I think Fred said that you can't use the language in the preamble to the general plan for any reasons, and that's not what you said. You said you can't use the general plan at all. So I'm just saying there was some discrepancy between what the 2 comments were, and I just wanted to point those out. It makes a difference.
Okay. It's pretty quiet up here. I'm just going to make a motion to...
Let me make another comment.
I can make a motion.
Okay,
I'm
go
going to
ahead.
make a motion to approve this, and we can still discuss it. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, now go on with your point.
Well, Trevor said that municipal code is not involved in the LIP. But just scrolling through it, just the first one I hit, 3.6.4, requires building code of Malibu's MMC. It's there.
Yeah, what I was saying was what they've asked for today is a coastal development permit. And to get a coastal development permit, they need to have the Planning Commission make 4 findings. And those findings there don't specify any general conformance with the Malibu Municipal Code. And so your determination tonight is to whether you can make those findings that they're asking for to grant them a coastal development permit today.
Even though the LIP mentions using the municipal code in specific, not general terms.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure which reference you're referring to, but the LIP does reference the municipal code in a number of different situations.
Yeah, it does in a number of different places, but
Yeah.
it doesn't say you must make a finding about this with respect to the
No, but I
municipal
would
code.
assume if it requires municipal code compliance, then you can't give an approval if it requires municipal code compliance.
I don't know.
And how would you know if there was municipal code compliance if nobody ever told you there was?
I'm not sure which reference you're pointing out exactly in the LIP, but what you're looking for here is that they've requested a coastal development permit, which requires certain, findings to be made by the Planning Commission. That's your role when there's an entitlement that's requested that requires a finding by the Planning Commission. You're there to determine those findings. We don't just sit here and, determine if it's compliant with, in general, all of any particular partition of the code or the LIP. What you need to do is make the particular findings that are required to grant the entitlement that's sought for.
And is one of those requirements, or findings, that it complies with the municipal code, with the
That's
LIP?
not, I don't believe that's one of the.
No, it is, if it complies with the LIP.
Yes, the first coastal development permit general finding requires a finding of compliant consistency with the local coastal program, which obviously includes the LIP.
Okay, so I'm trying to be not too stupid here, okay? If it requires sections of the municipal code to be complied with, how do we make that finding if we don't know if it is? There's nothing in here that says it is.
I believe that there should be analysis there is analysis in the staff report saying that it is in compliance with the LIP. Is there
in municipal code? The LIP says you got to use a municipal code under certain.
for certain entitlements or certain situations? I'm not sure which one you're.
Well, okay.
Is there something here that they're
just the first one I hit was in reference to roofs. Okay.
Okay.
Now, the LIP says you got to follow municipal code in reference to roofs. Now, there's probably a bunch of others in here.
Yeah,
I just scrolled down, but nowhere in here has anybody analyzed that.
I don't think there's an
What
issue.
aspect of a roof are you talking about?
He's calling it as a specific item.
I'm just saying that the first one I ran into is 3.6.4. Every residence roof shall comply with municipal code, blah, 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 blah.
I don't know which section that is offhand, but I suspect it's a building code section.
It's called residential development standards.
And in
Is the project conditioned to comply with that?
the residential development standards in the municipal code are the same as in the LIP in terms of height and
And why does the LIP say if they're more restrictive, the municipal code governs?
The LIP doesn't say that. The LIP says the LIP overrules everything.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. I'm pretty
I'll find the
positive
quote,
that it does.
but it says unless it's more restrictive, not. In other words, if the LIP had said 8-foot fences and we said 6 governs. That's true, isn't it?
You're correct that the city can adopt regulations that are more restrictive than the LIP.
Okay, my question is, unless we make a finding, or we are presented with evidence that it does, how do we make that finding? Well, it says you do.
There's a particular provision that you feel this project is inconsistent with under the LIP that references a section of the municipal code. You should raise that so that it can be raised here. But I mean,
my question is, it's not I should raise it, is I'm supposed to be presented with a staff report that says it is, okay? And all of a sudden, from last meeting to this meeting, that disappeared, okay? Now, you say it was an error, I don't know, but it disappeared, that finding. Whatever weeks ago we did that.
It wasn't a finding, it was just discussion under the general finding for consistency with the local coastal program.
In last staff report?
Last
Yes.
report, it listed both the MMC and the
Yes.
local coastal program. So
It listed both of them.
Right.
As if both applied.
That was not the actual finding, that was under
That
the
was-
discussion.
That was staff's discussion of it,
I think was it finding one?
yes.
This finding one, this is the finding that needs to be made, is that the project as described in the application and accompanying materials as modified by any conditions of approval conforms with the certified City of Malibu local coastal program. And to find compliance with the local coastal program, that requires you to find a conformance with the LIP. It was mistakenly included saying that you needed to find any compliance with the municipal code. That was not what the finding itself is. The language from the LIP is controlling in terms of what you need to make in terms of a finding to grant a coastal development permit.
Okay, now let me ask you this. If, and I don't know the municipal code down to the word, if the municipal code said you can't paint a house purple, and the LIP was silent to what color you could paint it, can you paint the house purple? Does the LIP govern? And as I read it, it doesn't. Okay? And that's why I assume that somewhere in here, we're told that it follows the municipal code. It is not more restrictive, less restrictive than the LIP.
Well, here's, if you painted your house purple, and if that was a valid law in the City of Malibu, interpreted to be more restrictive for some reason than as required by the local coastal program, then if you painted your house purple, you'd be subject to a code enforcement violation for
Why? You got a permit.
Yeah.
You got a permit. We gave it to you.
Yeah, you know, and I'm just, again, because I was confused. When I couldn't find the municipal plan listed before, I just didn't understand what was going on. And you read the LCP and it says, as a result, policies and regulations of the LCP supersede any policy or regulation of the city's general plan or zoning code in the event that there's a conflict between the documents. How do I know if there's a conflict? But there's nothing. There's nothing.
What that says is you follow the LIP. What that says is that you follow the LIP, and if there's a conflict, you follow the LIP. That's all it says.
Not if it's more less restrictive.
Well, I'm just commenting on what Steve just read. That's what that means.
I just, and I'm going to stop asking this, but I just don't understand how you can have these provisions that you have to follow the municipal code when you're never told that you are, and you never certify it, and you never make a finding that you are. So even though the LIP says the language you just read, that's where I'm confused. And now I don't see any problem, but all of a sudden we change from last week to now, and we get no information.
I guess another way to put the question is that there was a point made that we here in the Planning Commission are subject to the laws of the city, but in this finding, we completely don't even review a whole set of laws for the city. So isn't it a two-way street, or I don't understand why this project would be different than anything else we've ever looked at, which had the full code set against it.
This project isn't different.
It's not that it's not being reviewed against the municipal code. For example, there are conditions in here that talk about vegetation. These are standard conditions that deal with, Commissioner Euring, like what you were asking me about earlier about the tree that was mentioned earlier, but the reason we weren't that concerned about it is that there's a standard condition that we include for all coastal development permits where there's landscaping that says that view vegetation forming a view impermeable condition serving blah 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 can't be higher than 6 feet, and then there's a standard condition that says vegetation in excess of 6 feet in height shall not obstruct a primary view of an existing residence. So there we do make sure that the standards of the municipal code are enforced, even though you don't have to make a specific finding about that, but that's an example of where we apply the standards that aren't part of the LIP.
And it even says it in here twice, in the discussion and in the summary.
What does it say?
You know, in the summary, it says, the required findings can be made that the proposed project complies with the LCP and the MMC.
Where's it say that?
Where's it in the resolution?
Right in the summary here.
Yeah, there's nothing in the resolution.
Fine.
What are we looking at?
The staff report summary, that's standard language we put in all the staff reports where we have determined that everything is in compliance. So on page 12 of the staff report, it makes that statement.
Yeah, but in the resolution, is it in there?
It's not a required finding in the resolution, so it's not reiterated in the resolution. But it's stated in the staff report. If there's a specific section that you're concerned about,
So
let
basically,
Yeah,
me
like
know
under
what it is.
cultural resources, it says, therefore the procedures containing the LIP, Chapter 11, and those in the MMC section, blah, 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 shall be followed. So they do mention the MMC in here. It's not like it's
Yeah, but we
ignored.
never say it's.
In compliance with the
follows
Malibu plumbing code is required, for example, the stormwater regulations apply. There are various sections that aren't called out as specifically in here.
Then why was it specifically excluded from the finding?
It's not a
From last meeting
required,
to this meeting?
it's not required to be stated in the finding.
Then it's not official unless it's in the resolution, right?
It's not, the code doesn't require that you say that. But the law
Trevor,
requires that we review it.
If we don't say it in the resolution, is
Right.
there any
But-
basis in, that
There's,
it has to be followed? Because we haven't ordered it to be followed.
yes, well, what you've done is you've required as part of the conditions of approval to have various compliances with different parts of the Malibu Municipal Code. In order to grant, as I said again, to grant the coastal development permit, you just need to make the findings that it's consistent with the LIP and the other three findings there. They're still bound by all these conditions, which are part of the resolution.
And I find references number 52, number 64, number 65. And I'm just looking just super quick that call out the MMC. So it's not as if it's ignored. I mean, I get your point, but I don't know. I mean, it's not like it's not mentioned. And that's just one page I just scanned quickly.
But as a whole, it never says.
Well, I think we've had that answered.
The whole MMC has been complied with. It says little sections of it have been or have to.
Chair Pearson, I might be able to shed some light on this. If you could
I would love you to, Don. That would be wonderful.
It's a good discussion, and the points which you, as you are going through this with a fine-tooth comb in regards to the references to the building code, the plumbing code, that's all in there, and that's standard verbiage. Where you have seen reference to the municipal code and coastal development permits is almost exclusively, and Bonnie, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 17.62.080, and that's for site plan review projects. And the reason that you see that in coastal development permits for site plan review projects is because we protect primary views. If we are going to allow somebody to go beyond a by right project and build a house taller than 18 feet, then we require in the city of Malibu the findings, it references back to the municipal code because private views are not protected under the Coastal Act. And so we structured our LCP and our municipal code to have that. In this particular, and I imagine what happened in the first staff report is, you know, your beleaguered staff is writing a lot of reports and sometimes verbiage bleeds over. But the reason that was a mistake and why that was cleaned up on what was brought before you tonight is because this is not a site plan review project. It's an 18-foot tall house. So the other references you see in regards to the municipal code are all entirely appropriate for the building code and the plumbing code and everything else, but you do not have a municipal code reference because this is not a site plan review project. I hope that helps. Yes, sir.
Since the LIP was adopted, City of Malibu passed an ordinance for view protection. And you are doing a deal with a neighbor to follow that ordinance.
No, sir.
Well, whatever.
No, we're not. No, we're not. We're doing a deal with the neighbor because we want to be a good neighbor.
Okay.
But the landscaping plan that we had was entirely consistent, and our neighbor, Mr. Ball, does not have a primary view determination from his property. But you've admonished us in the community many times to work with our neighbors and try and sort these things out before we bring them to
But
you.
here's an ordinance that's been passed since the LIP. The LIP does not cover view protection.
For private view protection, that's
Right.
correct.
Okay? So we have to look at the landscaping plans. You proposed planting plants that grew over what's allowed under the view protection ordinance, which is not in the LIP, but it exists. It's an ordinance in the Malibu Municipal Code.
And we include standard conditions on all landscaping plan projects to address that.
But it's not in the LIP. It is.
That's right.
It governs more than the LIP.
Right.
Okay, so it supersedes the LIP.
It
And
goes
we
beyond
don't
what the
have
LIP covers.
any language in here that says you can supersede the LIP on this one item. Okay? The municipal code is part and parcel with the LIP because there are sections in the municipal code that disagree and are more restrictive.
Which ones?
There are sections that
The view ordinance.
But this is a 18-foot tall by right house.
I'm
so
talking
therefore, our
landscaping.
municipal code doesn't require anything in regards to that. Look, I understand the conversation, Commissioner, but if there's something in particular that you can point out to that this project design, this house design is inconsistent with the municipal code or common law or anything else, please.
Okay, well, I think I just did. You proposed plants that can grow over X feet, over 6 feet on your boundary. Okay, it's in this resolution. Okay, if he had a view determination, it would be in violation of the municipal code. No, I'm saying you are telling us that we don't have to certify that it's compliant with the municipal code. We don't even have to ask him if he's got a view determination under these findings. That's my question.
Commissioner, he does not have a primary view determination.
It doesn't matter. You're saying...
I think it does.
Well, we're making this motion. We're saying municipal code's irrelevant. But
I don't think we're saying that.
You're not.
Hey, okay, guys. Guys, turning into a giant argument.
No.
Yes.
I mean, I think clearly it says here, vegetation forming of view impermeable conditions is limited to 6 feet. It's covered here, number 29. So, I mean, I get your point. You want to make sure this conforms. I think our attorney, the head of planning, have said it does.
But where?
Well, I mean, for example, number 29 talks exactly about that issue.
Yeah, but the municipal code is 17 sections of, I don't know how many hundred of pages. And I'm not talking about a particular item. I'm talking about the code itself. Okay? Because we have to believe that every single section of that code has been checked. Or if it isn't...
Some of those sections come into play under different bodies. The plan checkers, for example, building safety, it's a different phase of review. Your purview is over the zoning part, and this conforms with the zoning standards.
Now, well, let me ask you this. If they had left out the section he just read about 6 feet on the fence, or whatever it is, and it violated the municipal code because of the view ordinance, what do we just vote on? We just voted to violate the municipal code, right?
Well, that's a standard condition that we include so that we don't run into that problem.
Yeah, now my question then comes, have you hit every single standard condition? Every single condition that makes something comply with the municipal code, or do you make a finding that it does? And that's a huge difference because you can leave things out. You can add things.
How do you want to address this particular project?
I would like to have the same finding we had last time.
It wasn't a finding, it was just a statement that the project complies with the municipal code. if the rest of the commission is satisfied that there's not a problem with any municipal code compliance, maybe they would agree to include that in the resolution.
Well, I see two sections, one of the LIP and one of the MMC, that do give me pause. You know, specifically the LIP, section 3.3 zoning on the rural residential. The phrases which respect surrounding residents. Also in MMC 1702-020, and character of the residential neighborhoods. We focus in this conversation on the height of structures, and that impacts views and everything. When something is between 3 and 6 times, maybe 7 times the size of direct neighbors, that also impacts the character of that residential neighborhood. That's my thought. I don't see those concerns addressed at all in this document. That first finding, not listing MMC completely, you know, just doesn't touch the section 17 observation at all, and there's no mention of the zoning district.
So 1702 is going to be the preamble or the introductory portions of Title 17. So what we review for is conformance with the specifics of the development standards. So I'm not looking at that particular part of 17. I just know that the development standards start in 17.40.040. So I can tell you that it does comply with the development standards.
Which LIP section were you looking at, Chris?
Oh, sorry. Let me bring it up. That was LIP. It's 3.3 zoning districts, and then the rural residential, just reading the purpose there.
I mean, we've talked about this in the past.
No, I don't.
The zoning standards are what implement the policy portions of these documents. So that's what staff has reviewed it for conformance against.
Yeah, if it meets the particular standards, then it's going to be consistent with the general purpose standards.
January 16th. Oh, no, that's...
Those standards were designed to be consistent with the purpose of the LIP and the LCP.
And in general, the Malibu Municipal Code Title 17 sections are almost identical to the LIP sections, mainly because it was designed backwards from that. The LIP copied the MMC. The only significant difference comes in, as Mr. Schmitz pointed out, when it comes to the view protection issue, and that's because, as he said, the Coastal Act does not protect private views. Malibu Municipal Code does, and that's the main difference between the two in terms of the development standards.
So is there anything anybody wants to add to the motion, or that would give more
what's going? This is not really a planning discussion. It's not really. This is a political discussion that's going on, and what the effort here is to avoid applying the law, and to apply it in a political way. Basically, they want to be able to come up with a way to come up with a way to say that this house is too large. Now, we just went through that last Wednesday with a similar project when this planning commission was overruled 4-1 by the city council. Now, in past times, John, I've had conversations with you. You considered that any kind of a decision by the city council was binding precedent, and that you couldn't deviate from it. In that case, at least there was the neighborhood character to hang your hat on. This, you haven't even got that. There is no neighborhood character finding that's required. It's simply a question of applying the LIP. You don't want to do it, and you don't have to do it, but let's be honest, this is a political determination, not a legal determination, and not doing your job as judges in applying the law to the facts.
Yeah, let me just,
listen,
let me just respond to that one second.
Let me add to it so you can respond at all. I think here it goes back to discussion, Steve, you and I have had before. I told you, I'm not a big fan of big houses. I grew up in a big house in Malibu. It gives me the creeps thinking about it now. It's huge. I'm not a big fan of it. I like single story. I like smaller homes. But that doesn't matter what I like. The people that set all this in motion are the people that helped form this city, and they spent a long time coming up with the codes, to follow our mission statement, our vision statement, all of that. We may not like it. I may not like it. My point is then we should change it. I think Don made that point too, if we don't like it. But I think we have a lot of evidence here that this follows the code as it is, whether we like it or not. I don't think this is trying to circumvent the code. I don't think it's trying to slide anything mischievous under it. I just don't see evidence of that here. I don't see that we operate that way. I think a lot of attention's been put to this, and I think it's well covered. So if we don't like the code, let's change the code. Let's elect a city council that'll change the code the way we want. And that's my viewpoint, and that's why, so far I see no reason not to vote for approval of this project as brought forward by staff with the change made today involving the trees. And I'm looking to go to a roll call.
Did
let's
have one
move
more.
forward.
Let me just say one thing. And it goes back to Jeff's comment. And last week, last meeting, I think it was, he sort of said this was the first shot of a revolution, I think was the way you face it, something like that. And my perspective, it's not a revolution. It's a recalibration. And I'll tell you, you're one of the reasons why this discussion of a recalibration is going on. The Planning Commission, ignoring everything that I can view, approved a development project and called 12-foot walls, covered in foliage, open space. Open space, okay? And I can't find that anyplace. So, I mean, this process that says that, so you took us over here, all right? For whatever reason. That was your decision. You guys could do that. And in addition to the 12-foot walls, you did it with a study that said traffic hadn't increased in Malibu in 25 years, okay? Both of those things I think everybody looked at and said, okay. So I think the process, what you saw in the election, and what I heard at the city council meeting last week, I mean, each one of the three city council people, Schuyler, Rick, and Jefferson, all said the house that was 9,000 square feet was too big. It was too big. And I agree with them. I mean, look, I believe that the intent of the general plan was to have the process evolve over time. I don't think anybody expected we're going to wake up overnight and have 10,000 square foot houses all over the damn city. And it was weird. We got 9,000 last week, 10,000 this week. I have no idea what's coming up next. And I don't know. I think that's what a planning commission, look, the people who wrote the general plan or wrote the code, I don't think they had a vision at that point in time that says, look at the money that's pouring into the city and look what that money is building. I don't think they viewed that. All right? Now, whether they did or, so I think part of our role is to sit down and say, okay, we understand what the code is, but the general plan says avoid mansionization. And it isn't in the preamble, it's one of the land use plans, okay? Land use policies is the general plan. I think that is a fairly clear statement. And at least in my perspective, I think that's part of what this planning commission is supposed to do. The city council can override us. The city council says...
No, we can't just rely on the general plan to overturn the decision here. The duty of the planning commission here is to determine whether substantial evidence supports the findings that need to be made for the particular entitlement that is requested. We can't just rely on the general plan to say it would be generally against this project. What's the job here is to just determine whether there is substantial evidence to support those findings, and if there's not substantial evidence to explain why not, so it can be recorded in a decision and fairly challenged by the applicant.
Okay, I mean, you got to look, and you're backing us into a corner, and I guess you're good, but I am disappointed, okay? You guys made a significant change from the staff report we got the last time and the positioning of that staff report to what we got this time. And there's not a word anyplace that says, here's what we did. And on top of that, I mean, I had a meet, I can't call the staff. I am not, Reva Feldman told me, I am not allowed to make calls to the staff to find out what's going on. I saw the thing, the municipal code missing a couple days ago, can't talk to anybody. So, you know, I mean, it's a way to do business. It's not the way I had anticipated it would work, but whatever.
Well, I just want to add a couple things. I still believe, I'm not talking about the general plan. I'm talking about the municipal code, which adopts the general plan. Okay, it adopts it. The city council voted to adopt it as part of the municipal code. But I have a problem saying I have to give a permit without saying that it follows the municipal code. I have a big problem with that because they are not exactly the same, okay? And as Jeff seemed to say that the city council made some decision last time. They very specifically said that it was not precedent setting, and it was because the neighbors, they talked to the neighbors or some kind of language like that. And I also look at what the LIP says on their table. It says, it doesn't say you must give X amount of square feet. It says this is the maximum you can give, okay? And that's different than saying you must give.
Let me ask a question based on what John just said.
Is that right? Yeah.
Can we add a condition saying it must also follow the MMC? Is there a problem with that?
No. Is there a particular provision of the MMC that you're concerned with?
Apparently, I'm concerned with the whole thing.
Okay. Well, they had to, yes, you can have a condition saying that it must comply with the Malibu Municipal Code.
Okay. Would you like to add that?
Of course.
Would that make you feel better?
A little bit.
Why don't you make that motion?
Where do we put it?
It's a friendly amendment.
Friendly amendment?
Friendly amendment. My friendly amendment is we go back to the finding or whatever it was that we had last time. So we have the exact language. Do you have it there?
We can't change the findings, but you can add a condition that would say the project must comply with the Malibu Municipal Code.
Now, why can't I change the finding?
Because the findings that you need to make are set down by the local coastal program.
The local coastal program requires us to follow the municipal code. So why can't that be in the finding? That we are following the municipal code?
It wouldn't matter anyway if you change the finding. What matters is the conditions for the project, that it has to make a compliance. If you want to change the findings that need to be made, we need to make a local coastal program amendment to change the findings that are required for a coastal development
Then why did we
permit.
get it proposed last time? I'm just using exact language that we had last time.
We were told already by staff it wasn't supposed to be, and it was.
Okay, and have we ever had this particular finding in any project in the history of Malibu?
What particular finding?
The one we're supposed to be finding, that it only has to follow the LIP.
But we're already suggesting we can add a condition here.
No, I'm talking about a finding. Has there ever been a finding that approves?
I mean, you can say that you find this to be consistent with the municipal code to the resolution, but you're not required to make that finding in order to grant the coastal development
Okay, have
permit.
we ever granted a coastal development permit that doesn't say what it said last time?
I would sure think so.
Yeah, I think we have. I don't have an inventory in my head, but yes, we probably have.
We probably have. Well, so I would like to have that finding. That's my friendly amendment.
You want to add that?
I want to, Steve got it here. Can you read it? Or say what the reference is, the finding number, whatever it was on whatever date we heard it last time.
Well, the one was in the last.
In the MMC.
The one that you changed.
No finding was changed. The description of the finding was changed between the two.
It was the finding one for
was the
a
language in
local
the
coastal
resolution
development
changed?
permit. The previous report was text written from a template for a project that also included a site plan review, which I think is why the reference to the LI or the MMC was included in that discussion language. But the finding one does not include a discussion or a requirement to conform with the LIP. It just states that it needs to conform with the certified City of Malibu local coastal program. So that was an error on staff's part.
Can you tell us what that was in the last resolution? Which section?
In the last resolution, it says The proposed project meets all the applicable requirements set forth in the LCP and MMC based upon staff review of the project plans and related reports, site visits, and specific group findings.
And that's my motion.
To add that you find that it is consistent?
Yeah, exactly what that said.
Could you read that again, please?
The proposed project meets all of the applicable requirements set forth in the LCP and MMC based upon staff review of the project plans, related reports, site visits, and specific findings below.
We're fine with that.
Okay, now I have one other,
If that's your motion, we need a second.
Well, you had
No,
a
it's
motion, that's a friendly amendment.
That's friendly
I have
amendment.
another
So
one,
you'd
too.
have
Okay.
to accept it, you and the second, and Commissioner Jennings.
And I can, legally, we can accept that? I just want to cover my bases now. There's no problem legally?
I believe do we have the language down exactly?
yeah, it's in the last resolution.
It just adds basically that it is compliant with the municipal code also, they're finding that. So that would be okay?
I'll accept it. Jeff? Nope. No?
Yeah, I have one more. I just want to add, since following the law, I just want to put down that I don't agree with the summary, page 12, because I don't feel that it complies with the MMC. Specifically, I don't think this decision agrees to protect the character of the residential neighborhoods. This specific neighborhood, with this structure being over 5 times, probably 6 or 7 times some of the nearest neighbors, I don't feel it meets that. So if I'm advised to still vote with this because I can't use that section of the code, then I just ask as a friendly amendment that it be noted that I don't agree that this comports with that section of the code.
Wait, you're saying there's a 1,500 square foot house in the neighborhood?
All of them are. All but one. Now, while we're thinking about that, I would like to make another friendly amendment, and that is that we include the language that they've agreed to, that the landscape plan will be amended to include no sycamore trees and nothing.
That was
on the-
staff's recommendation.
That's already
so
part of
if
the-
it
It's
was-
in
motion.
this printed one, and it just got decided today?
No, I think it was part of his motion, wasn't it?
It was part of my motion, and it was already showed to us on her report.
Yeah, Lily included that in her presentation and showed it on the
Okay.
slide.
Commissioner Euring, I also wanted to address your comment that if there is a legal issue about any item on here, you can always call me. So I don't know you've been advised to, but you can always reach out to me if there's a question about a legal issue on any item before the Planning Commission.
So we shouldn't call Riva, we should call you.
If you have a legal issue about an item before the commission.
I didn't have a legal, I was trying to figure out why it was missing. And if that was,
You can contact me about that.
you gotta talk to Riva.
Okay, so you're not accepting that condition? Which one? The one I made, the motion I made.
It's already there.
No, the one that Jeff didn't go along with, so that's not included in this vote, which will be very hard for me to vote for.
Somebody ought to pay me for being the parliamentarian around here. You offered a friendly amendment to the chair's motion, and in order to get that through, you need to have the permission of the seconder, and I didn't give it. But there's nothing that says that you can't amend the motion yourself. You make a motion to amend his motion. That's all you do. Then you get a second, then you vote on that amendment, then we vote on the main motion. That's the way it works. This is simple stuff, guys.
Okay, so that's what I do. I make a amendment instead of a friendly amendment, and
Make a motion to amend to change the finding to add the compliance with, that you find it in compliant with the municipal code per Commissioner Euring's statement. Is that correct?
yeah, so I make that, and somebody else seconds
Is there
it.
a
If we
second
get
for
3
that?
votes, it's passed.
Steve just seconded it. Can we vote on that now? Okay.
What is that amendment?
Can we read it one more time?
Yeah, sorry, thank you.
Commissioner Euring? Do you mind
Read it one more time?
Do you mind reading it one more
I can
time?
find it again, yeah. The proposed project meets all the applicable requirements set forth in the LCP and MMC based upon staff review of the project plans and related reports, site visits, and specific findings below.
It said LCP, right?
Which is what was there last time.
It came out of the last.
Yeah.
So John made the amendment, you
I'll second
seconded
it
it,
for him.
Steve seconded it. Can we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Mazza?
Yes.
Commissioner Euring?
Yes.
Commissioner Jennings? Vice Chair Marks?
Yes.
Chair Pearson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
So now that would be now we have the motion has now been amended. So now we need to vote on the motion, which was Commissioner Pearson's motion of staff's recommendation plus staff's added language about the sycamore tree and the shrubs. And now it also includes Commissioner Euring's amended finding.
And then I'd want to vote on the amendment I'd like to add, however I do that.
What amendment do you?
That was where I was saying that I don't agree with the findings on page 12 because I don't feel it matches, it meets the.
That's just a statement for the record. That doesn't affect the approval.
Okay,
So you
thank
already
you.
made it for the record.
Got it.
We have a roll call, please.
Chair Pearson?
Yes.
Commissioner Jennings?
Yes.
Commissioner Mazza?
No.
Commissioner Euring?
I don't know how to vote no. Yes.
Vice Chair Marks?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, motion to disband.
So moved.
So moved.
Oh, wait, we got one more.
We have one item.
Yeah, we've got the calendar. It's a A8.
Oh, jeez, where's that?
Yeah.
How did I miss that?
Probably put it back consent.
We voted on the calendar.
There was an error.
There was, Commissioners, this is just an item to correct your second meeting in May, to place that on May 21st. Wait.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move we adjourn.
So seconded.
Second
Aye.
I.
What?